Now we are South Africa. Think the rap was there. Nobody.
Yeah, like that. You think you can fuck with something like this?
What you mean, something like this?
Yeah, that's Puff. Jelani, do that thing.
When I'm on the mic, it's like murder, murder, murder. Kill, kill, kill. What says South Africa? They gon' make feel like a smack in the face. Rappers are fucking boarding in your passenger planes. What happened to all the cool rappers from back in the day? Nowadays, all these rappers sound exactly the same. It's like one big inbred fuck fest. No, I do not wanna stop, collaborate, or listen. Jimmy, 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 hold on to your chin. I'm taking over America, blowing up everything. Physically fit and ninja, very energetic. If you haven't got a banner, yeah, you're never gonna get. I whip my dick out and piss on all this harder to fuck it up. Brought her offshore to count the dollar bills that I stack and fuck it up. I'm sorry, my China, we not related. I come mad fast like the first time I ejaculated. Party boom boom, hit me with the ching ching. I fuck the king king, dollar eye twinkling. Just a pizza chunky, let's suck it the funky. Party boom boom, hit me with the ching ching. I fuck the king king, dollar eye twinkling. Just a pizza chunky, let's suck it the funky. Hi, my name is Yolandi Fakafasa.
Yeah, no kidding, this fucking song's so goddamn good. It's so hype. Alright, let's switch over to the usual music. But it's just so hype, man. It's awesome. The Antwoord is such a fucking good band. Hello, you're first actually. I don't think Abs is in here today. But good to see you, man. Get back to the usual one. Do me a favor, I noticed yesterday when I reviewed the VOD that the audio was clipping every now and again. I did adjust my thresholds, so hopefully it is better, but I am not entirely sure. It could be not better, aka worse. So we'll adjust that if it comes to it. And Javier, I really enjoyed your stream today. Thank you for streaming. I think your backgrounds looked incredible. Good job. Okay. Before we start our studies today, I want to do a quick little crit for your boy Spoud in the Discord. Spoud's an Indian, just like me. And he wants to be a great artiste, so we're gonna help him out. Okay, let's just quickly write his name here on the side. I should have maybe done a latency check before the stream, because my goodness, as is my thing suffering right now. How about this? There you go. We might need to reset something or the other at some point in the stream. Just I don't know how crazy latency. But yeah, it should be okay. Always here for James. Also, I'm an alien. I mean a human, not an alien. I believe you. Big shoutouts to Anjivir Art, aka Moana. We do appreciate her presence, as always. Okay, so this is gonna go on the YouTube channel because I don't think Spot can catch us on live because I don't think his internet supports the stream. However, we can indeed try and help him out. So this is gonna be critique for the portraits. So in portrait drawing, there are some fundamental things that people get right and things that people get wrong. Most of the time, people can just about get their way through the proportions, but when the painting really starts to fail is in the painting. Like, everything is bounded quite well. Unfortunately, the issue is that the shapes are simply not simplified because we tend to idealize and view certain things as far too complex and way more complex than they should be viewed in order to commit it to a painting. You gotta realize that when you make an illustration, when you're making a painting, you're making that passive declaration that, okay, I am going to think about an idea and I am going to simplify that idea and then paint it. Because if you try to paint every single aspect of everything that you see, you're going to end up with a very muddy, very uninteresting, and usually a very chaotic kind of painting. So we try to avoid that by simplifying, right? We always try to simplify. Have you ever tried to paint one of those really large landscapes that involve a bunch of buildings? Most of the time, that entire landscape is painted in flats, very little gradation in terms of the shapes, but because the flats are well chosen, everything seems to cohesively fit within itself, which is a good thing. So it's simplicity to convey an idea. And that's what we're going to be focusing over here, because the number one thing, I mean, besides the proportion and besides the value that could be pushed, is the fact that I'm not seeing clear, distinct shapes on this drawing. And it's what's kind of keeping it into that little amateur zone as opposed to letting it flourish in the way that it needs to. So, like I always do with my critiques, I like to go down a little checklist because there are certain things that are really, really important. I'll start the timer for this if I can. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like I can because I haven't turned my timer on. Let's just do that really quickly before we start. But don't exaggerate or you end up with a huge hole. A huge hole? Don't hole shave me, alright, Glow? My hole's perfect the way it is. Goddamn gatekeepers in my chat. Alright, hopefully it works, my timer. I'm hoping that it is. Hoping that it will. Please God, there we go. Okay, it should work now. There we go. Tech support myself. Okay, so when it comes to the overall drawing, what are some things that we can do to just immediately improve it and make it a bit more coordinated with my reference? So if you ever hear the phrase drawing is 2/3 painting, it's a very, very important thing to understand. It doesn't mean you have to draw every time you paint, but the idea is that the things that confine your values are some of the most important things in a drawing, right? Because I think Angie said in her stream as well, sometimes it's important to kind of introduce a little bit of line art, or at least a little bit of that idea into your piece before you start to detail it. It makes a lot of sense because within the crucible that is our proportions, and that is our boundary conditions, within that is what we establish our values and our light and everything. But it doesn't matter how good of a light we establish, if the overall shape itself sort of betrays what something is, then it causes us a bunch of dissonance in the drawing, and we don't like that. So drawing is 2/3 painting. We want to draw and we want to make sure that our proportions are good. So it doesn't mean you actually sit down and you try to draw individual lines. You can just do it with paint. However, you want to maintain that same fidelity of proportion, right? So there's a very big one over here that I want to point out. We'll start the timer real quick. We'll do this for like 20 minutes. But the big one over here is identifying the gross large picture, right? This is something that we get really, really lost in sometimes. And this is what's going to really make the piece differ between like a bit of an advanced piece of work and an amateurish piece of work. Because the big things really matter, but oddly enough, because we're so detail-oriented as people, we love just fantasizing and obsessing over the details. Sometimes we miss out on that bigger picture, and that's really important to realize because it's the bigger picture that really sells. So like when I say that drawing or just realism in general is never about the details, this is the kind of thing that I mean. Because when you consider the entire gesture or just the impression of the face, and you consider how round this is, right? So you have this breadth, this width, almost like she's being inflated in the middle. And they compare that to this, where the profile seems a lot more narrower. Then we see that we're missing something a bit integral to the piece, which is the overall shape of the face. And it's surprising how much people will miss this. I miss it all the time, and I'm sure that you will as well. But this is one of the biggest things that's going to like get you right, because thankfully I'm sure your visual measurement has saved you a lot in this actual face area, because I don't think that looks too bad whatsoever. Perhaps the distance between the eyes is maybe a little bit too large. But the biggest problem over here is the overall shape. And this is usually a byproduct of the fact that maybe sometimes when we paint a bit too close, because it's difficult to see those large errors in proportion when you are in this kind of vantage point, because things can look a lot more right than they are because we don't have a picture of the events. But even then, while it might look right, something will still look off to you, and you won't be able to tell what that is. Because when people view your work, they're going to be viewing it with their fresh eyes, and that'll immediately jump on this as a problem. So we'll first correct that. Canary, how's it going? And Disintegrate, good to see you. So I always say when you make corrections to a painting, don't ever, and I don't mind when you make corrections with like liquefaction and stuff like that, but in my experience personally, and if you're anything like me, it will apply to you, when you're making a change in a digital painting or you're making a change in anything, we tend to lowball quite often. We lowball very, very much, in the sense that we will make a change, and that change that we make is very ineffectual, but we will stick with that change. We will be committed to that change only because it's an improvement. I'll say that, okay, I'm going to move the brow a centimeter to the left. Well, a centimeter to the left is more accurate to my reference than what was already there. And sometimes we tend to just rest on that. We'll just rest on it saying, okay, now it's correct. And then lo and behold, if you ever have to make corrections on a piece, you don't make a correction once. You make a correction like 16 times in the same area. If you fix the chin, you will find yourself fixing the chin 2 times in the future, 3 times, 4 times. It happens again and again and again. And what I realize is the fact that when I make my first correction, I lowball. I lowball heavily. And that is why I really advise against, in a lot of cases, from using this simple manipulation. I think that the change needs to be very, very committed. You need to make a very committed change to the painting in order for it to be really effectual. And of course, I mean, some people will be able to eyeball better than me, but for my own tendencies, I really think that it's important for me to just make this change and make it very, very stark. I do not want to be ineffectual with my change. Just change it and change it harshly. Make a harsh, exaggerated change. Let me just quickly address this little thing, because we have brought in that face a little bit. I need to bring in this ear as well to compensate. So I'm not saying that I'm going to match the reference exactly with the changes that I'm going to be making, but the thing is I will get closer. I will get closer. And I'm pointing out things that are indeed mistakes. Okay, so you see already from there, just one simple change, and we start to bring it more into the realm of it being a person as opposed to it looking a little bit weird, right? So the profile of the face has been improved significantly. Right, now this isn't the most glaring issue, but I'm just starting there, right, with the proportions. Of course, the eye itself, I think I would maybe slightly change that. See the gesture of the eye, the angle of it. Again, it's going that way. I'm sure there's been some adjustment happening here, but overall that eye follows this kind of gesture on the skull, right? We have this gesture, this coordination between the eyes. And over here, it seems to be betrayed because it's going like that and it's going upwards like this. But the eyes themselves on the skull, they follow a very, very particular pattern, right? Because the eye, or the eyes itself, they're regular. They're placed in the head regularly, which means that there has to be a coordination between these two things, right? I never tried to master art. I just try to not suck as much. Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody ever masters anything, right? Nobody just rests on their laurels, and if they do, they probably... It's just a strange thing, because the ideology that requires you to become a master in comparison to your peers is an ideology that demands that you always strive for improvement. Otherwise, you don't get to that place in the first place. So I want to introduce a slight little... So the idea is that it's following the same kind of rhythm, right? It's following a circular rhythm. So just something like that will be enough to kind of just help us sort of set things in motion a little bit better, right? Something like that. So I'm not saying the exact position is going to be accurate, but the change is good, because now suddenly we've increased the coordination between these two things, because I want to really tell the viewer that this is belonging to the same face, which means that it has to follow some sort of rhythm. It's almost like if I was going to draw a robotic part in perspective, so something like this. I'll draw a quick little part here, if my pen would stop lagging. Yeah, we're gonna have to maybe turn something off at some point. But if I was gonna draw a quick little part in perspective, right? Let's just say I design like an arm joint, like that. There's always gonna be a coordination here. So how about I do this, like that, for example. So the coordination here is that I want to say that this side over here is going to be this side, but closer to us, which means that it has to follow that same little rhythm, right? Because if I did something like this, then suddenly it's lost, and suddenly you don't know what you're looking at. But once I put this cut line over here, then I can continue to develop the piece, and suddenly the perspective begins to slowly emerge, and then I'll end up with a shape that looks somewhat well, this is like quasi perspective, but it'll still look, you know, somewhat decent, because there's certain things that are being obeyed. Like, for example, if I do this, then suddenly we have a question mark over there. Is it still the same piece? But if I put it in perspective like this, if I just make it in perspective with one single line like that, then suddenly, okay, now you think that, okay, it could belong to the same object. And the brain will pick up on this constantly. It will pick up on the idea that things have to follow certain rhythms if they belong, right? Just like certain things will have similar value structure or similar local value or local color if they belong. So even the same way applies to drawing as well. Things will have a similar orientation, a similar rhythm if it belongs to the same object. And that's a very big, a key little thing for a proportion, right? So something like that, for example, which is a really simple, like a robotic part. Maybe it has something coming in here. But the thing is, since I'm coordinating all of my perspective lines over here, everything fits together in a way that makes sense. So when I erase things, to give you an idea of what I just drew, and suddenly we're left with something that makes a lot of sense in the context of this. That kind of thing, right? So things are coordinated because of the fact that I follow the same rhythm. The same way the eye follows a rhythm, so I want you to respect that rhythm. So it doesn't even matter if you have to strictly follow the reference for this, by the way. But I mean, it'll be there in the reference as well, because as far as the coordination of the human being goes, in terms of their construction, this is not something that's up to debate. Like, nobody's eye will skew one way unless they had some sort of debilitating injury. So that's something that you have to consider. Okay, so I'll continue this. So now I just talked about these overall changes, right? So again, there are a lot of these. I just made one, but there are a lot of these little changes that I expect there to be made to fix the piece, okay? So for example, the jaw over here. Something really important when you're drawing women, by the way. Understand that women don't have extremely strong jaws. Iris, thank you.
Subway 100 bonus 10. Hi James, a little sandwich for you. Less than 3, less than 3, less than 3, less than 3.
I do appreciate it. Okay, a little bit of a tip when it comes to drawing women, okay? Marty Feldman has skewed eyes. Okay, let's not talk about exceptions. Most of the time, the majority of the time, especially when it comes to naturalistically drawing people, you draw them with a rhythm in the eyes, otherwise it just looks weird. And it's clear that this person in the reference also has a certain rhythm, right? But talking about drawing women as opposed to men, so women in general have smaller noses, smaller lips. You know, they can draw larger eyes. The eyebrows are generally a little bit higher on the face. But one of the big ones is when you're drawing them on the side of their faces, for example. We'll draw a quick little profile here. They will develop a profile. Is the jaw, okay? So the jaw, we'll bring the jaw up here. So for a man, generally speaking, the jaw is going to be harsh, and it transitions harshly into the ear, like that. Okay, but for a woman, you don't have this kind of harsh jaw transition, okay? Because, again, because of lack of testosterone, the development of the jaw muscle and the jaw bones are not as harsh. So what happens is that this actually gets curved a little bit like that. So a little beautiful, supple little curve right there. And this is very common. So I'm not saying every woman will have a weak kind of jaw muscle over here, but the majority of them will have this kind of idea. And it's good to kind of, if you're ever wondering how to feminize something, because that's an important thing, right? A lot of people suffer from this, by the way. Myself included. Everything that I draw, every woman that I draw will end up a little bit manly if I don't focus. And this is one of the things. This is one of the things that you have to consider. Okay, so in that respect, we can make a little bit of a change here. Okay, so I like to talk about the reasoning why certain things work. And at the same time, I'm going to adjust some of your values, okay? Because I want these values to really speak to me a bit more. I spot a not so abroad Indian, you got me. I would say that Marty Feldman's eyes made him perfect to play Igor. Igor is known for the skew eyes. Igor and Quasimodo, they're really bringing up the skewed eyes division of Hollywood. Okay, so I just quickly changed that value. Also, a quick little note here. If you have any extra money, by the way, to throw around, take Jonathan Hardessy's course on realism. It's a great course to learn a lot of what I'm telling you right now. But I would keep the values. So that's it for my corrections for the proportion. There's so many more to do. But I'm not going to touch on everything. But this is the big one. I don't want to over exaggerate information. But see, the more I make these changes, the more it becomes a little bit clearer that things were a little bit awry before, and now we're arriving at a place where things look a lot more sensible, right? So it's just simple changes. And again, the biggest key in these changes is the fact that I'm making them very harshly. I'm not really talking about how I identify the error. That I can talk about later, but the idea is, and I've explained this before, but the idea is with shape association, with general impression. And of course, when you're zooming all the way out here, it's much easier to tell when things are going awry, right? When you have a good perspective. And notice when I'm making these changes, I don't really care about the edges, because the edges can be fixed at any point whatsoever. But in order for me to really visualize the piece with a high amount of clarity, I am ignoring the edges. I'm choosing to ignore them at this point. Because it's very, very trivial for me to go back in here with any sort of brush that softens. We'll pick the most typical example, an airbrush. It's easy for me to go in here and start to fix this edge, right? That is not an issue, right? If I want to fix the edge around the jaw, I can fix that easily. But the thing is, this only works on the basis of the values underneath. Realize that without that darkness underneath here, it doesn't matter what the edge is, right? It'll still look wrong. That's the prioritization of things on a drawing. We put the value in and then we start the edge. Right, we never start at the edge and then fix the value, because the edge is very integral to the value. They're not separate things. So you want to establish the most important thing first and then go towards the edge. So most of the time a painting will work without any edges whatsoever. And I've done a lot of these paintings in the past. And you should be able to choose a shape and choose a value and draw something to the point where it should be able to hold its own as what it is, just without any edges whatsoever. If everything is hard or everything is soft, it should still be able to hold. And that's how you should be designing your shapes, in fact. You might design the shapes to be airtight to the point where it's always going to depict the things that you are painting. Okay, so we'll talk about those shapes in a second. How about right now? So I'm going to be designing some shapes. I will do this just to illustrate my point. I'll do this with a selection tool, which is an extremely hard edge, right? And we don't require anything more than that. So one of the biggest issues over here, now we're talking about the value, right? This is all I will do for the corrections of the proportions. There are many more things to do, but that's all I talk about for now. So we finished the value. Now we finished the proportion. Now we'll talk about the value. So the biggest issue with the values here is you're very non-committed. And this is a very fundamental mistake that just about everybody makes, including myself, by the way, when you first start painting. It's that you don't have the idea of shape. You generally apply values nondescriptly in certain areas. But the issue is that since you're not committing, you're kind of towing the line, everything is going to look a little less impactful than it needs to. What I mean to say is that, look at this light value over here. This light value is telling you something a little bit strange, and it's not actually happening over here. Because with the direction of the light and with the structure of the head, even though if you haven't studied, if you're showing this to a person that hasn't studied the structure of the head, immediately they'll be able to identify the idea that over here we have, let me just highlight this with red maybe. So over here we have a certain plane here, right? A certain plane. And this plane is being drawn out by the value, which means that this is going to be a front-facing plane, and this is going to be roughly a right-facing plane, right? This whole plane over here, that's going to be a right-facing plane. And the light is coming from this direction, which means that this right-facing plane is going to be in shadow. So if this is going to be in shadow, how will an area that's in shadow have a value comparable to an area that's in light? Because these two things have certainly comparable value, and that should never be the case. Because you want that amount of visual clarity in the picture for you to clearly identify what's where. So instead of just kind of muddling around over here, what I really want you to think about is make really harsh changes and make really like encompassing changes to your work, like this, for example, right? So I'll show you that there's nothing to be afraid of when you're doing these kind of changes. It's fine. So we'll make a really large change over here because I've identified, right? We've said that this side of the face is going to be in shadow. And there's a lot of ambiguity in what that really means, right? Some of these are in light, some of these are in shadow, and there's no clear depiction of exactly what we're seeing. So we simplify it. We'll simplify it just like that. We'll just make it one value. How about that? Now see, even though the edges aren't really respected, suddenly we have, the face seems to occupy so much more volume, right? We have so much more volume on the face because suddenly we have this in shadow. The same thing applies for the light, by the way. So I'll just simplify these light shapes here. I'm gonna use a really large brush for this because again, we don't need to get specific at this point. I just want to clearly indicate, using my knowledge of the face, or the head rather, I know which planes are going to go into light, which planes are going to go into shadow. So we'll just quickly put that information under the piece. And we should be able to get it into a close. Now it's important to be able to understand the surface of the face, and it's important to understand what the various planes of the face are, right? This is very, very important to understand. So in that respect, it's great to study simplification of the face or study construction of the face. Do one of those things. So either study your Loomis, study your Riley methods, or study your Sarro head simplifications. Study one of those things. You don't have to know all of them to make your work look good, but you need to know at least one of them. It's just a good idea to know. That way you'll be able to make your value choices really matter in a piece. Be almost sensible. So I'm barely even looking at the reference, by the way. I'm just using my own understanding of where things need to go for this painting. I don't know for it to be a success, but you require that visual clarity with the shapes. That's what's really important here. That visual clarity is really what's going to sell the piece. Okay, so let's say I've made maybe 2, 3, 4 shapes. All the things are starting to look a lot more orderly. You see that? It's a dramatic, orderly change. And the thing is, we don't have to be afraid about this sharpness, right? To a certain degree, it's true we need to be somewhat aware of this. But for the purposes of explanation, I think it's fine for me to continue to paint with a high amount of hardness. So remember, I'm not going to be doing this if I was painting this portrait for myself, right? Because I would just do this stuff and I would rein it in later on. But the idea that you have to be thinking about is that there's going to be a little divot here. That divot is caused by, you have a big old cheekbone, a zygomatic curve here, and a zygomatic arch. Sorry, zygomatic bone and a zygomatic arch right there. And then you have a divot, and then in comes the jaw muscle underneath. So what's going to happen over there is that they have a layering kind of effect on top of each other. So we're going to have a darker value over here. Okay? So what's happening basically, if you're wondering why the dark value happens, is that I have this beautiful, beautiful muscle on top of the cheekbone, as well as the cheekbone itself, the zygomatic bone. I have that over there, okay? And then it goes all the way up here into the zygomatic arch. So this is a raised area. And over here, I have my mandible coming all the way down. I have my lower jaw, okay? And then I have my maxilla kind of raised somewhere around here. My maxilla, and of course I have my my masseter muscle on top of that, and I have my orbicularis oris muscle on top of there. So there's a lot of musculature over there. But the idea is that we have a bit of a divot here, before the jaw and below the cheek. And that's why that value happens there. So we don't really require all that much. So just simple information. Also, I can sort of note to the viewer that, okay, well, this is going to be in shadow, so I can join these shapes maybe. I can join these shapes and say a little bit more about the corner of the face, just like that. Even this might be a bit too much, right? Maybe it's a bit of an oversimplification, or sorry, overcomplication. Oh, sorry about that. I'm gonna disable my system sounds real quick, because that shouldn't be the case. Okay, it's disabled. Sorry about that. I think it may have gone undisabled at some point. Okay, but this is the side of the face again, so I'll just share this value. You see that I'm just sharing values. I'm not adding a bunch of values. I'm just using the same value whenever I can, wherever I can. Okay? So once I make that change, this is what I have to do with the change once I make it, right? So I'll just make sure to simplify. One thing that's really important when painting faces is the fact that, especially women, by the way, especially women, do not have crazily vast transitions between values in the face. Because the face itself is relatively going to be around the same value in a lot of cases, right? Between light and shadow, of course, there's going to be a large amount of difference. But in the areas of light, for example, like around the cheek that's curving, those areas are not going to be so distinct. The reason is because when you look at that particular area in profile, this is a cheek, right? So this is a cheek. So the area of the light in the cheek is going to be here, and the area in shadow is going to be right over here, right? But you realize that the planal difference is really not that much. Compared to the side of the face, right? The side of the face is going to be this much. There, it's justifiable that you have darkness over here. But on the cheek itself, just because you have a little bit of a form shadow over there, we can't exaggerate that. Because when you put a dark value like this over there, for example, on the cheekbone, what you're telling the viewer is that the actual structure of the cheek is something like this to merit that value. Because remember, the values are what's kind of telling the viewer how the object is responding to light, right? These shapes of value, those are two-dimensional shapes to capture three-dimensional forms reacting to light. So it's important to realize the gravity of the situation when we try to capture things like that. So keeping things a little bit subtle is important. Okay, so the value, let's just say we're done. There's so many changes to be made, but the value we'll see are done. Just in a bit of a hindsight, I would like to slightly up the darkness around the eye, because again, there are two reasons. One is it's accurate to the reference, and two is an area of focus. Whenever you're drawing portraits, let's say you had 5 minutes to draw a portrait, what would you do? You wouldn't draw the cheekbone, you would draw the eyes, you would draw the nose, you would draw the mouth. You know, key humanizing areas right there. Get those right, and your piece may as well be done. Get those wrong, and your piece is always going to look unfinished. A little bit of that emphasis in the eye, right? And suddenly we're getting to more of a sensible location. Realize that the proportional changes I did make were improvements, but they are not perfect, right? The entire gesture of the face should be a little bit more smaller. But so let's just say that I finished my values, right? So I just addressed this over here, just a little bit of visual clarity, right? So let's just say that I have it, but now I require the complexity back, right? But realize that the complexity needs to be built upon these simplified foundations, because if they are not, they're never going to work out. Realize that the complex painting, I say this all the time because it's true, a complex painting does not start complex. A complex painting starts simple. It starts frighteningly simple, and then it becomes more complex, right? Don't ever think that somebody that's a master at their craft will just begin to add perfect values to their piece. No, and what a master will do is he will follow a process that is most conducive to a good, successful piece. And he will follow that, and that doesn't involve always delving into this idea of complexity from the get-go. Okay, so once we have the value, right, it's really systematic. We did the proportion, we did the value with the shapes, and now we address the edges. Now I can say objectively, okay, let's say this is a soft edge over here. This is slightly harder, and this is slightly harder than that. How do I know this? Again, most of my corrections are done by just getting a vague impression of my reference, right? And it's bolstered by my knowledge of structure. So how do I get a vague knowledge of my reference? Either I zoom all the way out and think about what's essential, or I go all the way in and I blur my eyes, I defocus my eyes, whatever you want to say. I do all of that stuff and I think about what things really strike out to me. Like when you defocus your eyes, I'll make it larger for the stream, but when you defocus your eyes, you're still able to see some amount of clear separation in this edge over here. However, edges like this, for example, you can barely even see when that transition happens, right? And that's important because when we paint this, what that means is that we cannot use a similar edge over here. Now this might seem frighteningly obvious to a lot of people, but I encourage you to think about this kind of particular way of thought because it's really helped me out. Because when you organize things like this in your brain, thinking that, okay, this is going to be my softest edge, this is going to be slightly harder than that, slightly harder than that, slightly harder than that, and then hardest. When you think about things in this kind of term, your speed becomes so much faster when it comes to finishing a painting. Because a lot of finishing the painting is involved around kind of correcting your edges. Especially if you paint like me and you paint everything hard, for the most part, you're going to be correcting edges a lot as it goes further and further into the piece. So it's great to have an edge hierarchy in your brain, thinking about, okay, exactly where do I want to use this. So in that respect, how do I connect that to my piece? Well, I said that I want to have very soft edge over here, right? So I'll use an airbrush for this particular area over here. I'll use an airbrush. You see, I'm kind of maintaining my shape right there for the most part. But I simply use an airbrush, and now I achieve this particular edge. This over here is slightly harder, right? So slightly harder to me implies maybe I can use like a bit of a granulated brush like that. Slightly harder, right? So we go slightly harder. Remember that even when you're doing this kind of change, you're not restricted to a single brush. So let's just say that I want a soft edge with a little bit of granulation. What I could do is I could do this, right? I could use the same soft brush and I can get that edge that I'm searching for, just like that. And then I can introduce a little bit of hardness via that little harsh little brush right there, right? I can get a bit of texture out there as well. So this edge over here is not as soft anymore as this edge because I use multiple brushes. That's a pretty cool thing to remember. But yeah, and we can just go on throughout the piece and we can do that, right? I can even go so far as to just blur this out if I wanted to. Because when I want to create a really hard edge or really soft edge, I just blur things out. And you see that kind of still reads, right? I'm not going to do it for the piece, but the idea still works out. You see the power of that? So now we have the opportunity to kind of really experiment around with the edges and really achieve what we want to achieve on the piece. But for now, what I will do just for the sake of time is I'll just simply use a bit of an airbrush. And again, without compromising the shape too much, because again, it doesn't make any sense if we compromise the shape. I go in here and I make just a couple of changes here. This kind of idea. Same thing over here. For this one, I really want to retain their hardness. So instead of painting it with an airbrush, I'll paint it with just a soft brush. Do you do charcoal, James? Yeah, I do charcoal every now and again. I don't do it very primarily, but when I sketch in my sketchbook, I do use a 6B pencil and I use white charcoal a lot of times if I'm not using ink. I prefer ink most of the time. But can you hear my mom in the background? That same thing goes down here. So there's a very slight edge right there. You see, slowly but surely we develop like an understanding without having to compromise on the shadows and on the shapes. But I do like my charcoal. Now we're heading into that direction of realism, because it's not really true realism unless we really focus on the edges. And also, it's perfectly fine for us to do things like this, for example. If you want to defocus something for the sake of a painting, that's fine too. So that's the artistic element thrown into it. Like, for example, I would tend to lose a lot of these edges in this painting because, you know, it's just fun for me to lose edges. I do like losing edges if I can. But that comes in a later discussion. We don't have to talk about that right now. But if you know what a lost edge is, now's the time where you actually put it into a painting. Now, with that soft kind of boundary, I can start to introduce a little bit more of this hardness. Same thing goes right over there. And now we're slowly going to build up. I'll just put a loss edge right there, meaning I'm not going to draw the transition. I don't have to draw that transition between the neck and the hair. I can just imagine that it's there. The amount you need to actually put on a canvas to make something read is actually surprisingly negligible. Something like that, right? And I can make some correction to the proportion over here as well, while I do this little change. Just to make the face stand out a bit more. And of course we can make this a little bit softer. This little hard transition edge over here. Like I said, this is usually why I don't straight paint this. Sorry, I do straight paint this as opposed to using the selection. But it's still possible to get that back, even if it's done with selection. It's still very possible to reclaim that edge. I can make slight adjustments here with an airbrush or with a burn brush, whichever I choose. You see, the more I work, the more edges that I slowly get into the picture, the more we kind of arrive at that skin texture we're looking for. Not the texture, but the read of it. Texture can be done in the stage, by the way. We simply have to add in a little bit of granulation to some of our strokes. For example, I can do a little bit of this fine grain, just put it near the edges. That's how you kind of make things look a little bit more skin-like. Of course, we don't overdo it, otherwise things look really cheap. Texture should be always used a bit sparingly, especially on faces, especially on female faces, I should point out. Any unnecessary mark will tend to age the face, is usually the problem. At this point I can maybe bring back some of your detail in here, the eye. But everything will start to look a little bit better just because of the fact that now it sits on a decent bed of value. These kind of changes. So that's how you would apply that to the entire drawing, basically. And you would end up with something that looks quite decent. Same thing goes with down here, by the way. I should have done the simplification for the entire piece for you to really see it, but that would take a little bit too much time. But just the initial stage of just simplifying the value, that doesn't take any time whatsoever. I can do that really quickly. Just making things a lot more organized. You see, I don't have the ambiguity in my strokes or in my shapes, right? Everything is very clearly in the light, in the shadow. That there's no ambiguity there, which is the really key point in a portrait. You don't want there to be ambiguity in any of the places, right? That's like the biggest point. And at any point, you can always just take a step back and get a read of it, right? Get a read and then think, okay, well, where exactly am I going wrong? For example, what about the gesture between the eye and the eyebrow? That gesture is going wrong right now. So we simply make an adjustment, like I said, make a harsh adjustment like that. And then we can just compensate with that value right there. Make sure that it's appropriately lit, and make sure the edge makes some sense. Things like that. Then we just go back and forth. Of course, if your proportion stage was accurate, then this would be a lot more easier to do. But this is like the biggest change, right? That's like basically everything that you would need to finish the painting. And the biggest problems with it. Hopefully that was helpful. But that's basically all that I had to say about that. Went a bit longer than I required, but I wanted to show you like how much you need to do just to bring it to a finish. And I think it's a decent improvement. So hopefully that made some sense. Of course, the proportional crit that I did over here, it wasn't exactly to the same reference, right? I just fixed it because of heads, just because I know heads. But of course, if you make this more proportionally suited to the reference, then it would look more like the reference. But again, I'm just focused on making it look like a good painting. Alright, so we can bring this in here. And there's a couple of things over here. But again, so the biggest things to summarize for you, the biggest things that I want you to think about in this particular painting is, number one, you think about that overall size of the face, okay? So I'll write this down for you. A new layer, hopefully. The shape of the face. Number two is clear shapes. And number three, edges after shapes. Okay? And if you get these three things right, it should be able to rein something in into a much better finish. And also, if you want additional things to study, please study Asaro. Your Asaro heads, they're going to be invaluable to you, because if you did good Asaro studies, you would not come into this problem, because you would think to yourself immediately, thinking, okay, this is the side of the head, there's no way there should be any ambiguity in terms of the value, because everything is towards the side, which means that it has to clearly be in an organization of shadow, always. Okay, so it really helps to know structure. It's really, really important. Like, it's going to be the difference between spending an hour on a face and spending 3 hours on the face. Okay? So knowing structure is vitally important. So please do those studies. Bonnie, how's it going? Good to see you. That's Bonnie. Let's just quickly export this, put it on Discord, and hopefully we can continue. I'm not sure where the lag is coming from, by the way. It could be from this file over here, but it may not. In which case I need to restart my my Chrome. What are you okaying about? Alright, go to actually new and save this really quickly. Hopefully you guys think that is an improvement. See you, Solmer. Thanks, dude. Thanks for stopping by. I do appreciate you. And yeah, shouts to Angelier as well. Thank you. I said I just thought of a joke. What was the joke? I'll just put that in the critique section. But these are very, very common things. I'll just show you a piece by myself, just so I can really emphasize on how these are all very common mistakes that I had to overcome myself, and I'm sure everybody else, if you have pieces like this, are going to eventually overcome as well. They're nothing to really condemn yourself over. It's a very, very common group of mistakes. Everybody goes through them. And still now I see artists even on Twitch like that do faces all the time, make the same mistake. And I will do it on time to time if I forget. If I forget my fundamentals, I'll do the same mistake as well. So don't worry about it. Just focus on the things that I said, and they should get you where you need to go. Hopefully that's okay. I think it's alright. Lady Monet, eater of hair? Okay, but where's the joke? What is the size of this image? Oh goodness, that's not good. It's 730. Okay, we're gonna have a little bit of a latency issue, so I'm gonna quickly close down Chrome. Hopefully it helps. And it does help, that's good. We'll restart it quickly. Yeah, our whole name. Did I ever tell you the story about the person that saw fools? There was a story about this man. He is from a little village on the outskirts of a large castle, and he goes into the castle one day on a whim, right? He's just kind of looking for a new adventure, and he sees people all sitting down in a row talking to each other, and he thinks, oh well, that's kind of stupid, right? Why would you do that? Why don't you just do something more useful with your lives? He goes to the castle and he sees the king dining with his family, and they're all eating with forks and spoons, and he thinks, oh, that's kind of weird. They're all stupid, because why would you do that? You would just eat with your hands, right? And then he goes up to the very top of the castle. He sees all the people, you know, using modernized equipment for the field. He thinks, why would you do that? That's kind of stupid. You could just do that with just a hoe, right? And then he leaves the castle, and the king turns to his wife, and he says, Jesus, was that guy stupid? Have you heard that story? That's food. Okay, hold it. Let's just fix this a little bit. Hopefully that works. Oh, you guys never heard that story? I just go to bed to it. Okay, I fixed my latency problem. Okay, so these are the studies that we're going to be doing today. They're going to be between 45 minutes and an hour. Hopefully I get through all three of them if my internet holds. But we're going to be drawing people and animals. That was a crit. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I thought it was a positive change. A lot of good information in there. Maybe the overpainting could have been done better, but hey, do me. Get rid of that real quick. Should be good to go. Take a swig of water. These references should be available in Discord if you choose to paint along. And if you guys have any more questions, you are free to ask. Already tidy. I'm actually really looking forward to this because I've been doing line work all day and it's really hard on the eyes. Look forward to just doing some good old painting. Let's just quickly fix the crop and then we can go into the painting for today. Alright, let's just say 3, 2, 1 and we'll go. So again, I'm going to do this in that same reductive style of painting that I really like, that I've been enjoying today, or these days rather. So I'll just simply prime the canvas at the very beginning. I'll prime it with like a warmish, lighter value, just to begin with, right? Not too specific. Now I've got to think about the layering of this, because the layering is really, really important in these particular paintings. I'll just start with that lighter, yellower value that's reflecting off of that, of the clothing. So we go right there, we go right there, we go right there. So I'm really going to be thinking about every opportunity I have to paint in certain things, okay? Same thing goes for up there. The values are going to be somewhat comparable, but remember when colors are darker, they don't tend to reflect as much light. So I'm going to be slightly more conservative with this particular value when I choose it. I'll test a value that seems to be appropriate. So we got it first try. So we can just use this value. I'll just lay it in a few areas. How about there? How about... Easy enough. Abs, how's it going, dude? Good to see you. There's going to be gloves that slightly go towards the cool. So I'll desaturate that and I'll just paint that like this. Easy enough. Okay. Let's put a little bit of a warmer patch up there for his face. And we can throw in some lighter values up there for the hat. We'll desaturate that. Seems to be reading a little bit harsh. That seems okay. I'm really taking care of those values right now, at the very beginning of the piece. Okay, so we start right there. Really, really simple arrangement, but yeah, we should be able to navigate this just fine. Let's start to put that horse in really quickly. What do you eyeball that value as? It does seem a little bit cooler, doesn't it? So it goes maybe more towards the purples and it goes towards the dark. I would say about this. Maybe I'll brown that up slightly. That's my first choice. It actually seems to be not that bad. I will push it a little bit more to the blue. I want to cool that down. But that seems to be okay. So now I'm just going to cut that horse in really quickly. And I'll warm it down towards the bottom because I'm going to assume there's going to be some amount of reflectance hitting the bottom of the horse. So I'll slightly warm that up. I'll paint that horse in. I want a darker value flanking the horse, and that darker value goes a bit more towards the deep reds. I can probably use the same dark value underneath the horse, like that. But again, I don't have to be specific with any of these strokes just yet. It'll kind of follow. Oh snap, a pretty goal, freezes. Typical. How about that? That seems okay. So again, we're going to be adjusting a lot of these values just based on the background, so we don't have to care too much about them just yet. Just make sure that things are appropriately positioned. We'll get those ears in there as well at this point. Again, we don't have to be too specific with these either. We'll be simply painting those in at a future time. Let's get some tapering out of the way here, because we know how things taper. Something like that. But again, I really like this kind of painting because it just affords you such an amount of luxury when it comes to deciding where things are going. And at the end of the day, you always end up with something that looks quite decent. I'm really happy about. I'll sample this value right off his thigh, let's say. I've got a lighter value right there. We'll just introduce a light value right over there. A little bit for the face right over there. Seems okay. Just really orderly, right? Don't care too much about it. I'll give a little bit more information about these shoes right over there. And that'll be carved out a little bit more in a little bit. I'll add a touch of warmness, maybe not that much, because I want this helmet there to be the lightest value. So we'll lighten it up slightly. We'll touch it with a little bit of that warmness. But that'll be really sold as lighter when I add a little bit of darkness in there. It's going to be the idea. I'll add a touch of darkness in a second. And just add a bit more real estate right there. And we should be good to go. Just mild adjustment right there. I haven't really dealt with the shadows just yet, but we'll get there in a second. Should be just fine. Okay, let's just add a bit more brushwork in here because I've just been blocking things out with the same brush. Apologize for the traffic outside, by the way. That's India for you. Even at the wee hours of the night, do we still have things crossing by my lowly street? And again, there we go. Alright, so particularly get a little bit of ventilation in there. Keep things nice and loose in certain areas. Because we can gradually up the amount of ambiguity as we head lower and lower on this piece, which is nice. So over here, I'm going to pick some complementary, not complementary, but pick some shadow values to go on the bottom here. So I'll just pick the local value, I'll redden it up slightly, and I can maybe use this brush that I like so much to kind of paint in a little bit of that form. Kind of show and give the viewer some cues as opposed to exactly where the light's coming from. A little bit of visual indication. Already we're looking nice and neat. Good. So I have some dark values to already play around with. I can play around with those values again. Seems like a darker green almost on his neck, right? So we'll paint that again. I'm gonna use a slightly sharper brush for that though. But let's get a dullish yellow value. That seems okay. So we'll start right there. I'll pick a value from maybe the neck of the horse, so the tip of the horse right there. I'll put that dark in there just like that. And while I'm at it, we'll put a little bit of dark around his head as well. So again, we slowly build up that complexity. That's the name of the game here. At the same time, maybe I can start to mold this horse a little bit. Add a bit more darkness towards the side. You can really see the structure of the horse's head in this kind of picture. Looks really cool. Okay, let's just quickly get that using negatives. We can get this height real quick. It's fine. And I'll sample some lovely warms to use later on. I want to slightly maybe shift the horse's temperatures a little bit around. The values will still be organized, but I'll slightly shift those temperatures on the head, just to whatever I think is maybe better suiting to the painting. But ultimately, like with all things, we don't need all that much to really make this read as a horse. We should be able to suffice in quite little value changes. And the real money in this particular horse is going to come from these occlusions near the side of the face, telling us where those big hefty cheekbones go. And of course some of the values, some of the darkness is going to the eye. You see that eye? It's sideward facing, as we would expect from horses. Again, horses are not predators, but they have sideward facing eyes. Always good to kind of remember those kind of little tips and tricks, especially when you're designing creatures, right? That's one of the things that Terrell Whitlatch touches on our course about creating animals. Terrell Whitlatch created most of the animals for Star Wars, so you know what she knows what she's talking about. That's one of the things she touches upon in one of her classes. At this point, I can slightly lighten up this background on this side. We'll push it up to more of a warm, something like that maybe. I want a little bit more of red right there, just a little bit more. Keep things coordinated. There we go, that's nice. Again, I'm going to be kind of weak with my strokes because they're probably not going to be finalized. But I want to get a little bit more form in my piece, right? I want to sculpt this ear out a little bit more. I want to figure out where the side of the head is. So just a little bit more strokes right there to give me a bit more context. Same thing on the other side. I will darken it up slightly though. But again, just to hunt for more context on the side of the piece. I feel a sudden urge to design a horse with predator eyes now. That'll be fucking terrifying. But it's definitely possible. I remember reading a very old comic illustrated by Frank Frazetta, and that involved Hercules fighting against a bunch of horses that had fangs in their mouth, and those were very cool to see, because horses are actually terrifying. The way their mouths open, it's kind of sick, honestly. It's really, really cool. The horses fighting each other for more details. They're really fun to paint. I'm adding a little bit of occlusions in the hair. right over there. Just a couple of little pieces of information. Those darknesses are so important to sell something as realistic. Horses are omnivores. Can I get a quick citation? Are they really? That's terrifying. They will bite you? I mean, so will my ex, so it doesn't mean she's a... Well, technically she's human, so... I guess she's also a omnivore. Get a bit of darkness over here. There's a protrusion of the skull right there, which is what's causing that over there. Bit of a skull protrusion. Get some shapes on the face. Again, I'm gonna have that beautiful, beautiful darkness near the snoot. Always gotta detail that snoot, because people are always gonna look for that snoot as a good area of detail. At this point, I'm gonna make a slight little proportional adjustment. I'm gonna bring this little area down. A horse walks into the bar, and the bartender says, "Why the long face?" And the horse replies, "Well, your boy Indian abroad used a liquefaction tool on my face and pulled my muzzle down lower. My sympathies, good horse. But the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few." Let me bring in some slightly lighter values to show reflections on the surface of this leather. I don't have to be specific with this, right? Because we're heading away from our area of focus. So again, the further away I head, the less I care about certain specifics. This is how I structure my values and my edges and even my brushes to a certain extent. Like the further away I get, the more ambiguous I am with my strokes, done completely intentionally. Because you don't really need all that much. So again, there's going to be some amount of raising and some amount of divoting over here, because this is the point in the horse's head where it curves around. So what's primarily and most important to do over here first is to find that side of the mouth over here. And remember, there's so much that's going to be going on the horse's face that it doesn't make any sense for me to define the horse's head and then draw things around that. I can draw the horse's head using the things that's around it, right? That's how I'll save a bunch of time. So what is that value? What actually goes on over there? Like what actually is happening around the side of the horse's head? Well, there happens to be some amount of like dullish, goldish value. So I'll prime the area with a little bit of warmness, just really quickly, and I'll just immediately jump in and I'll throw in that highlight value, which seems a little bit awkward, right? To do it this way, but it's really not, because one of the most primary portions of that particular area is going to be the highlight, right? We don't see all that much in terms of the occlusions. You don't see all that much in terms of your form shadows, but that area is really defined by its highlight, by the reflective spectral light that's hitting it. So why not just put that in to begin with? Because you see, suddenly everything is reading, right? Suddenly there's so much more context in that area. So sometimes the essential quality of something is really, it really depends on what that thing is, right? Like the essential quality might be its shadow, but it may very well just be its highlight. Because I know we are geared into thinking about the idea that a highlight is a detail, but it's really not. And the more I've painted, the more I realize this to be true. But a highlight is not a detail. A highlight is an essential part of an object, right? Especially depending on the object that you're painting. But it's a really, really important thing. Putting a highlights in is not adding a detail. It's completing your piece. I think that's really important to understand, because some things are made by their highlights, right? It's not a detail. It's an integral part of your piece, and it should be treated as such. Like a piece that's missing a highlight or missing any component in the fundamental lighting scheme, it's going to look incomplete no matter what you do. It's going to look incomplete. Because it's just an aspect, it's just a part of the piece that needs to be painted. And there's no two ways around it. It really clicked with me when I was seeing somebody do impasto oil studies. Not impasto, I'm sorry, alla prima oil paintings. And like, he just jumped to the highlights in certain areas, and his painting looked so beautiful towards the end of it. I was really wondering, because some areas he did jump to the highlights, but he never went back. He never did anything in terms of the form shadows, gas shadows, the intricacies, the halftones. He never went back, but the painting still held. And I was wondering, why is it holding? This dude just jumped into the details. And I realized that, lo and behold, well, these aren't really details. They're really just fundamental. They're fundamental to those particular portions of the piece. So again, same little idea up here. So even though it's technically within my area of focus, it is not the focus. So I just simply need to put enough here to support everything else in the piece. Enough there to support everything. That is sufficient. At this stage I can also make modifications over here, which I neglected to do before. Simply to bring in a snoot a bit closer to itself. Right? Bring it to much more of a horsey snoot, as opposed to a non-horsey snoot. Okay. Remember, this is going to be a generally dark area, so I don't want to pussy around with this. I will paint it dark and I'll paint the lights back in later on. But I was being too much of a... just being too afraid of those values right there. Don't ever be afraid, don't let your painting boss you around. You're always the master of your painting. If ever you feel like your painting is controlling it, take your tablet outside and burn it. Don't actually do that, but realize that you're in charge. Also, we're missing a healthy amount of grey on this piece, by the way, and I don't like that, so I'm going to introduce some greys right now. Because greys are so beautiful on pieces like this. It just adds just that extra oomph, that extra element. It always seems to be missing in a lot of pieces. Okay, well the change seems to have been a little bit too exaggerated. Now we're going to do a bit of a flippy floppy. We should be okay in the most part, should be able to salvage it just fine. Let's quickly define the bottom of this face a little bit, and I'll warm that up really quickly. Just warm that up slightly. A bit excessively maybe, but you know, well deserved. I think we deserve to do a little bit of warming every now and again. And I'll just make the shape a little bit more larger. Like that, and I'll even warm up the shape a bit more. Something like this is sufficient. So we're bringing that front of the horse, and the sides are kind of flanked by a lovely lighter and a bit more redder value. How about this? That looks nice. Okay, apply that with a little bit more texture though. Now that's fine. Of course, the side of the horse will be corrected in a second, but we can just continue with this. And we have a whole lot of complexity over here that I will eventually simplify it. But for now, I can add a couple of strokes just for context, just to tell me what's happening. Now I can use certain brushes over here to really bring about the kind of just evoke what's happening over here as opposed to just straight paint it. Chain and a bunch of things over here. Just going to use a little bit of brushwork here creatively, get things looking the way that I want them to. Again, that chain as well, quite heavily defined by that highlight. I'll be taking a note of that and making the appropriate change in a second. I like doing change with a bit of a canvassing brush, just kind of makes some sense. It's a very tiny detail, right? So it's worth just putting that in. Sometimes it's just a bit of a canvas texture, but you don't want to be straight painting that, especially because it's not the area of focus. It's not really affording it too much by straight painting that. Of course, we have this value that's hiding away over here, so that we can start to paint it just by simply sampling around, getting some values that are somewhat locally situated. These adjacent values will help us. As the value is adjacent, it's going to prevent things from looking a little bit too stark. Again, we don't want there to be these crazy value transitions down here in the piece. We want to keep things somewhat controlled. That maybe. A little bit down here. Now suddenly we have brought this horse somewhat into the fore right now. Throw in a little bit more darkness. Maybe I can just sample some darkness off here, off the front. And we'll add a little bit of a foam shadow as well, near the tip of the nose, indicating that it is a subtle little curve there. Just a bit of additional information, goes a long way. I'll form out the side of the nostrils. Just using the values that are there. I don't have to add too many values there. Adding too many values will again bring it to too much attention. So we do this subtly, nice and subtly. Only have a dark value that can go down there, which will be this value. Things are nice and organized. Thank you for the shout out, Angevir. And slowly make use of this lovely warmness, because there is warmness coming to the piece, right? It's filtering from the top. So it's kind of weird. Always thinking about what your primary light source is, then defining things with respect to that light source. It's just about everything should be trying to confirm that light source's existence, be it through occlusion shadows, be it through cast shadows, and be it through temperature shifts, right? I think everything should kind of be geared towards that light source. Yeah, Ab just gave you a shout out because he wants your attention. Throw in some quick little light values in there. Start slightly ratify that head. And already we've developed the horse, right? Do a little horse right there. And a little bit of noise towards the side of it to indicate all those little straps, for example, kind of come off the side. But we have enough information for this to hold. Gotta be a little bit careful as to not betray the form. Such beautiful animals these are. That might seem a little bit excessive, but maybe I can just balance it out with a bit of desaturation. And we can add, at this point, we can choose to add a little bit more detail if we choose to, but the horse's head still holds with the piece. We can just about choose to move on at this stage to another area, because I think I've sufficiently defined enough over here. I can throw in a little bit of blue as well, show a little bit of the environment there from my education. That's basically what that is. Sometimes you just got to show your education on the piece. And we'll draw a bit of a core shadow here as well to really hone in that transition. Okay, well that's a very, very quick but effective horse head. Welcome back, Solomir. Solomir, did you just follow me on Instagram? Was that you? Let's throw in a little bit of this beautiful, beautiful hair. I was wondering, how does this help with designing later on? As this is a side-by-side painting, I can see value in learning colors and simple painting skills, but do you feel that this type of study will, when you draw imaginary stuff too, or just the first 2 points I made? Well, this is, so when I do everything throughout my day, that's entirely on design, but I do never want to like give up on my illustration side. So this is more like, once I have a design, how do I convey that? Because I'm not like straight painting any of this stuff. I'm really thinking about how do I best convey this with relation to my image. So if I, for example, had designed a horse with a bunch of implements around its face and with like a rider on top, what I'm learning from this is the idea of how to portray that effectively as an illustration as opposed to a design. So we're not doing any designing at this stage, but what I'm learning with this one is illustration. So learning how to really bring a concept to a very evocative, very painted kind of finish. Because I don't want to give up on that, right? So if I'm designing something, I usually keep it to off-stream. I like to think about it a lot. But I do think there's a lot of value in just like applying fundamentals and learning how to paint something. So that's what I do here. Because frankly, I think I do sufficient amount of work in like every single day just for the design portfolio. So I like to just take some time off just to draw and to like work on my illustration skill, because it's really important to me to be able to have an idea kind of well portrayed. Because ultimately I feel like it's going to be pieces like this based on my own designs that really kind of set my my portfolio apart from other people. Because I'll be able to do it in a very, very painterly style as opposed to that ridiculously like hyper polished ArtStation kind of style. So hopefully that kind of afforded me some amount of luxury when it comes to being a little bit out of the ordinary. Put a little bit of this background here. Usually there's some extra points I was missing. No. Because now that I'm drawing basically full time, I have the luxury of like separating things, which is why I'm not doing like reference-based studying or whatever on stream. Sorry, like reference-based designing on stream. Because like I said, I'm doing enough designing for me to be happy about the amount I work for it in a daily basis. So I'm happy now for just doing something that's way more like painterly and reference-based. Just to work on my mechanical skill, work on my ability to paint and to use different styles, which is what I'm doing right now, right? We're using that reductive kind of style of painting, which I really enjoy. All of that is effective and it's just good practice. Got some warmness in here. I've been studying a bunch of Eastern armor in my free time, in my sketchbook. It's been a lot of fun. I've been focusing a lot more about the shape language of certain armor types. I was watching a bunch of videos and a bunch of tutorials on ancient armor that's been used in Europe, because I had to draw a bunch of like Catholic Crusade style armor for my portfolio. So I was studying exactly what made that armor belong to certain eras and ages, and it was really cool the amount of like opportunities that there are for just interesting little designs on top. I can show you something I did roughly. This is what I was working on right before, since I have it up somewhere. I can show it to you. I was doing a 3/4. This is a rough sketch for line art later. Maybe I can show this. I was designing this armor set. So really kind of fun to go in and then kind of really figure out where things are meant to be, where how they attach, and little opportunities to add. Because this is eventually going to be like Latin phrasing, for example, on the bands. But it's really good to kind of deconstruct and then apply it towards certain characters. I don't know if this is actually going to make it into my portfolio, the finish line work of this, but yeah, it's okay. Not too bad. If anything, it's a good practice for 3/4, I guess, since I need to get better at those. I think the perspective is fine. The design itself is a little bit uninteresting to me, but yeah, I mean, it looks okay. It's more of a test than anything else. Just hit that with a bit of fundamental, and that's all we need to do over there, which is awesome. We just hit it with a bit of a shadow and a bit of a highlight, and then we're done. Which is great news, because we don't want to be bogged down in any one place in this piece. We want to be nimble, keep jumping around. Let's get it done in the required time. I'm not sure about this little highlight here, because it's really kind of conflicting with my highlight up top over there. Even though the lights are still a bit lighter up there, it's a bit of a question to me, whether it makes too much sense to do it this way. Maybe it does. I could always just whiten this out, right? And that'll draw even more attention to the top. Like when you're stuck and you have no more values to really apply, you can just desaturate. And the things that are burnt out into white are usually going to be interpreted by the brain as the lightest points in an image. Though to be fair, in general, you don't want to burn out your lights arbitrarily. There should always be a reason for it. Because generally speaking, realistically, you would never burn something out like that. It would make a lot more sense to have that be just a lighter value, because your eye would technically adjust to the lightest point. It's a very like camera thing, having things be burnt out, but it can be used very effectively in a lot of paintings, don't get me wrong. Especially paintings in shadow, use that kind of concept really heavily. I'm gonna do this with a straight line brush real quick, just to put that edge in a way that makes some amount of sense. And after that I want to really corrupt that edge over here on the left-hand side. I don't want it to be anywhere near as perfect as it is right now. So I'll simply corrupt that edge with a bit of texture. It doesn't have to be perfect. And it's really important that it isn't super straight, because otherwise it's going to draw way too much attention. So I slightly muddy up that edge, and add a bit of a transition so the contrast isn't as high. Real quick. Also, I quickly skimmed through that armor tutorial that I bought on Gumroad, and what's kind of reassuring to know is that a lot of his conclusions when it comes to drawing armor are very similar to my own conclusions, which is kind of a feels-good moment. Especially what he talks about the dark areas in armor being the most important, especially when you first start drawing it. Again, it seems like an obvious thing, but it's really important to consider. Again, don't want too much attention to be brought into this area, so therefore it's going to just be done with a couple of values, not too many. And I'll slightly lighten up this area as well, just going to unify the light in the background. These things are going a little bit ambiguous, so we'll just unify it real quickly. I'll hit it with a little bit of a lighter and warmer color as we go higher, but it should be able to hold by itself in a second. And again, as I continue to paint, keep things in proportion, using the size of my brush. And that way we kind of end up with a finished painting. Cool. We are 29 minutes in. Do a quick little pause for the head over there. The head needs to be adjusted. Needs to be brought down a bit lower. So we can do that. Again, think about it as a full complete picture. So we put in that hair first. We just paint in the correction. And that. I'm gonna use the painting to correct the painting. So we don't waste any time by doing the correction then. Because again, we're all about learning efficiency with this method. So we'll use that efficiency for our own benefit. CJ glad back? Thank you for the follow, man. Oh, thank you for the raid, rather. I do appreciate that. How's it going? How's your stream? We're doing a quick little study of a man on a horse right now. But hopefully you had a good time. Let me know what you're working on. Run a bit of red right there. To define the edge of the helmet. We don't really need all that much more. The reason it looks a little bit incomplete is because we don't have the light value on there. We have a mid-tone, but it's not really reacting to the light in the environment. So we hit it with a few of those lights. Sorry, something doubled up. I'm just killing the echo for myself. Something's doubled up on your end? I'm sorry to hear that. Hopefully it's okay. Hopefully I get that sorted. But yeah, share your work if you like. I would love to see it. I'm gonna add a little bit of ambiguity here for the amount of jewelry or whatever, the engravings and the markings on his helmet. A little bit of information right there to convey what's happening there. Again, not straight painting any of this, because that would defeat the point of the study. Keep things nice and ambiguous. There we are. You are no longer in a weird parallel dimension. Oh, I understand what happened. So you raided me, which made you host me, but then you had your stream open, so you were hearing me twice. I'm assuming is what happened. But yeah, good to have you, man. Welcome, everybody. We're doing a quick little study of this little horse guy. We'll be doing a few studies today. That's basically what I do over here. I do daily studies on, well, sometimes on Twitch, but most of the time, however I can manage. It's good to see you. I was working on concept art for a 3D animation. May I see it? Are you allowed to show it? Is it an NDA thing or? I hope I'm still live. Am I still live? The entire power just flickered. Okay, cool. Basically failing to study my own people and animals. Let me see, I wanna see. Show me what you got. I'm sure you'll blow me away. Or you are way too harsh on yourself. But yeah, and if at all I can offer you some amount of benefit, I will do so. We'll go in on that phase towards the last like 10 minutes of the study. But for now, we'll just simply apply whatever we think is necessary to make that read the way it needs to, which means that we need to add a saturated little shadow down there. Not that saturated and slightly more yellow. Like this would be sufficient. There we go. Nice and saturated. Bring that down and we can actually use the same value in a few of these areas. We'll bring in that nice, rich, ochre reflected light in a few of these areas. Some of it can most likely be burnt in as well. Giving us that nice little metallic look in certain areas. It's good to see. But that doesn't bode well, by the way. We may well have to prepare for the stream to go down. But hey, what can you do? Something that's just out of our control. I'm not going to lighten up that value ridiculously in the background, because I do want to kind of remain and retain focus on the very top of the piece. But I will not be negligent in the application of value down here. It's okay to be vague about things, but you can't exclude things in a painting. Like for instance, when you're drawing a gesture study or something, you want to submit it as a complete painting. Well, if you just ignore the head entirely, it's going to look incomplete. But if you have a vague notion of the head, oftentimes it'll be a lot more of a successful piece. It's good to think about things in those kind of terms. Have like a vague notion of things as opposed to have things completely excluded. The same thing goes back to our talk about highlights, right? It's really, really important to put that highlight in regardless. It's not a detail, it's an essential part of the painting. It should be treated as such. Cannot go crazy with it. Like surface texture, all these ambiguous things, those things can be just dismissed. Because again, they're not integral to the read of the piece, but the highlight, to say that the light is reflecting off the object and hitting our eye in a particular way, that is a very integral part of the piece. Very, very important to put that in there. It's not a detail. That's essential. James, how's it going? Good to see you, Heidi. Good to have you in here. Hope you're doing okay. Did I spy a piece on the Instagram pretty recently? I remember that looking quite good. Yeah, but CJ, if you wanna link me anything, go ahead, dude. Or if you want to just link your Instagram, you don't have to link a piece in here if you don't want to, but you're more than happy to let you use the chat, import your social media. I do not mind whatsoever. A little bit of that. I'm back to work. It's good. My day job. Excellent. So it's back to the translating thing. Has anybody told you that you look almost exactly like that girl from The Shape of Water? I watched The Shape of Water on the plane ride home, and I was like, this girl looks exactly like Heidi. Looks exactly like her. And she's also like, she does sign language as well. I mean, she's deaf, but sorry, she's mute in the movie, but it's a really stark resemblance. I'm gonna throw in some little bit of ambiguity in the background, using some interesting brushes here. Finally made it through my exams. Hell yeah, Solmir. I'm sorry, hell yeah, Shades. Oops, yelled the wrong name. But does that mean we're gonna see more of you? How much time do we have left in the study? 37. Okay, so we can start working a little bit on those on those head details in a second. Just a couple more little marks here, just for my own sake. Lovely lightness coming over there. And we can add in just a little tinge, little teeny tinge of pool value and define some things that happen down here. Just try and do that with interesting brushwork, as opposed to straight painting it. A good movie, The Shape of Water. It is a very good movie. Guillermo del Toro. I'm gonna toss in a highlight there. I did see the link, by the way. I'll click it in just a second. And of course, we need to bullshit our way. Gotta bullshit our way through those little gold values down there. So continue. Let's just add some bullshit there. And hopefully it works. Bit too green, don't you think? What do you say? Bit too green. Something like that is fine. So we just have just a vague evocation of what happens over there. Again, we do not need a straight paint because it's away from area focus, right? We're trying to have a strong area focus in this. Alright, let's see that. An X said beware. An X said I was absolutely sure it was you. It does look a lot like you. And to be fair, it's a beautiful lady, so I hope that's flattering. Okay, what is the comment accompanying this? The reason I say I'm bad at studies is I literally never do them, so they aren't in my Instagram. Here's a Discord link, hopefully the screenshot. Me trying to use an Arden show, use Arden show as a reference for an animation character. Okay, let's see this. That's not bad whatsoever. I think it's going pretty well. So for animation, I guess what you're looking for is to be able to like recreate the face in all the angles. So you're going to be able to rotate the head, I guess, and make things consistent. So I guess what you're going to be eventually trying to do is like develop some sort of orthographic understanding of the character. Like you're going to look for something like this, right? Where you're going to be able to draw the character in all angles, I guess. You doing another study on the stream? Yes, I am doing another study, yes. It'll be a 3D animation, so I just need a character sheet to make the actual character. Makes sense, yeah. So I just want to look for the cardinal views. Looks like it's going pretty well. Not bad whatsoever. Let me know if you need any help. I'm more than happy to give you a crit if you need it. But I'm sure you're going to be able to solve this by yourself. I have confidence in you. Okay, we can continue this. And let's go a little bit inwards. And we can put in a couple of touches of highlights towards the top. I have this fancy little brush here that puts dots everywhere, and we like dots sometimes. You cannot fear them. "3D animation, huh?" So I've actually got a call about a 3D animation job this morning. And unfortunately, I'm not a 3D animator, so I couldn't really follow up. Not to say that I got the job or anything, but it was an opportunity to like look for employment. I should really think about learning it myself. It'll be important for the skill set. I know that Bazari, who is a professional artist friend of mine, all the time he says you gotta learn how to do 3D because it'll give you a job really easily. And to be fair, he's probably right. Maybe I should be spending some time in my day to learn something like Autodesk Sketchbook Pro. Yeah, this is not that I'm an artist. They don't really know exactly what kind of art I do. Yeah, shouts to Bazari, my professional, the most professional Polish artist that I know. He was a monster, very good body of work. So I have a little bit of ambiguity in this area over here near the arm. I'm not quite sure what I'm looking at, so I kind of want to resolve that ambiguity really quickly. I'll just do that with a bit of value. Because people need to know what they're looking at. They're looking at as a base of a sword, assortment of value right there. Doesn't help if the dude's wearing white gloves and a white background and a white everything, so the amount I can really put in here is somewhat limited, but perhaps a couple of strokes. Less a little bit more detail in this area will afford me some liberty. Saying that truly there's something over there. We have about 4 minutes left in the study, so the time that I have to really accomplish this is somewhat limited. We'll see if we're able to get a really subtle look. Here's a tip to kind of quickly draw straight lines in selection. You make an ambiguous selection, and you simply do this, where you select points on selection, and you're able to straighten things out like that. That's how I do my really sharp lines. Of course, you can just use a regular line tool or whatever, but it's a really quick way of doing it, if at all you're stuck for time. You get a really sharp selection like that. That's using the snap feature of the selection tool. I'll simply just ambiguously put the sword in. Just sampling some background values here and there. Getting some of that highlight in there. You don't have to be specific, again it's a sword, so all I have to do is to respect whatever occludes it. So the ear over here is going to occlude the sword, so that needs to be painted in. Of course, I need to put in that highlight value as well. I'm still having a weird edge issue with selections. What is a weird edge issue, Shades? Is it the idea that your selection edges are a bit too harsh, or what's going on? A little bit of that for the sword, and we'll throw in some dark value at the top. There's going to be a reflection of the horse right there. We can just sample the horse value for that. I end up with jagged edges. I asked on Discord before, but no one knew. Are you just drawing or working with a very small canvas? Any chance? Okay, let's just do this quickly. Add a bit of a shadow here for the visor. Be a little bit control about our values as well. We add a bit of an occlusion on the bottom of the visor. Over there. We're going to throw in some redness as well for the bottom of the nose. Are you painting or filling into the selection? I'm assuming that's to you, Shades. This is a group study, by the way, so if anybody wants to join in, references are available on the Discord. This is the first study of the day, but I plan to do about 3 maybe if I have the time to. So you're welcome to join in. Some quick little notes here. I want to give myself a bit more real estate to work with, so I'll quickly do a bit of a modification here. Pull you down slightly. Just really looking for that shape, you know? Because once you get the little shape of the face towards the side, everything else should really fall into place really quickly. So I get this dark value here, this side of the face and this side. I have light values on either side right there, indicating the cheeks, so just paint those light values there and there. I have the dark value of the nose right over here, as well as the darker value obscured by the helmet. Up there, that value kind of spreads towards the eyes. Now this looks a little bit ambiguous, but it'll make sense really soon. Throw in the eyes there, make sure that's nice and warm. In the eyes. And we can make a little selection here. Just darken up that top real quick. The screen captures it quite well. Okay, well, we'll look at it in just a second. Actually, I ran out of time there. 45 minutes was the time. Let me just quickly finish at this face, and I'll check that out real quick. Just throw in a couple of little shadows right there. Not with that. The pixely edges are about 10 pixels high and wide on the canvas. Okay, I can look at that for you. Let's see. Put the eyes in here. Put a slight little hint of that mouth. We'll push the color to more of a red there real quick. And a bit of a foam shadow at the bottom of the neck here. Sweet. 46 and 51. I'm happy with stopping it right there. Steady number 1. Okay, let me see this Solner. I'm sorry, I keep calling you Solner, my bad. Shades. I have his name stuck in my brain. Sorry, it's late. Thank you, man. Ah, I see. I'm in your head, it's true. Thank you, Shades. Yeah, I really like this kind of painting. Just leaves me with like really interesting looking pieces. It's like heavy paint. Heavy Paint is a software, by the way, if you guys aren't familiar with it. Very, very basic painting software, but I do recommend time to time painting in it. It's good to just remember fundamentals. And also it's good to train multiple approaches as well. Especially since I'm testing illustration technique right now. If you want to see more pieces in this particular style, I have some of them right here if you'd like to see them. I have some horses, some tigers. Stuff like that. What I'm searching for, I haven't found, unfortunately. Strange. I could have sworn there was somewhere in here. Okay, let's look at this for... No, this is your piece. Let me look at Solmer's. I'm sorry, let me look at Shades real quick. God fucking damn it, every time. New layer, or new piece. Thank you, I really appreciate that. I was actually looking for yesterday's piece. Yesterday's piece turned out quite... it was really fun to look at. It was a piece of armor. Can't find it. I don't really know where it is. I found this piece though. This is done in my usual workflow. Because I don't usually paint in this particular style, but this is how I would generally bring a painting to a finish. But it looks very generic to me, so I don't really... I don't oftentimes paint this way, but I'm comfortable. Just if you needed me to do a commission, for example, it would be done like this. But again, it depends, right? I've gotten some commissions lately that have been actually in my ambiguous style, which is kind of fun because I guess people do kind of dig it sometimes. I'll give you an example of that. This is something I'm working on currently. This is kind of fun, right? It's kind of a mix between a tight and a loose kind of painting style, which is really cool. This is a kitten being washed in a plastic bag. I was doing this while blitzing through a bunch of episodes of Evangelion. I started watching that show. Kind of cool. Okay, so with this, let me just test if I'm having the same issue, because I don't know if I am. So I guess I'm not. Like, I have it in a smaller scale, but I'm assuming like these things aren't individual pixels, are they, in your computer? Like, what does your stroke even look like before? Like your selection, what does it look like? Let me just switch my view in Krita, because we can try and resolve this right now. We'll start the next 30 in a second. We're going to be doing this one, if you guys want to get ready for it. We'll do this bird landing on this person on the horse. A lot of complexity. Or we could do this one. It only happens when I'm super zoomed out. Only happens when you're super zoomed out. That could be an issue with the way that Krita does simplification. Because Krita does simplify blocks of pixels the further away you are. That's only for optimization though. So you can do something real quick, Shades. You can post on the Krita subreddit, and there are a bunch of people that actually frequent that subreddit that offer, like they're devs of Krita, so they usually offer you a bunch of useful advice. Zero, how's it going, dude? Thanks for raiding. We're just doing some studies today, guys, but I do appreciate that. Follow Zero on Instagram and on Twitch. Really, really good artist. Yeah, there's an active community on there. I post there all the time. I've been doing studies of animals and people, so I just finished a quick little 45-minute one right now. Got some examples of my work down here, and you can check some more on my Instagram. Let me just drag a few pieces in here, since you were so kind enough to raid. I'll show you the kind of work that I do, just about every single day that I can. Some examples of my recent work. Some of these are long pieces, some of them are shorter, but all of them I do enjoy. Welcome, Zero. Thank you so much for the raid. It's been a while since you've last touched base, huh? I usually try and... here's the piece from yesterday, by the way. Little armor piece. Look at that read, man. Look at how cool that reads. Like, look at how messy the strokes are. But then look at that read. It's so fucking good. How was your stream, man? What are you working on? Show me your work. I want to see. I've been really enjoying seeing the other pieces on Instagram. Yeah, but that's the kind of work I do. It's really good and cohesive. Yeah, I do. I mean, as far as loose painting goes, I'm a big fan of that piece. I think that piece is really successful. This is my abstract approach. This is like my loose painting approach. And I have some pieces that are a lot more tighter, like that, for example. But yeah, a lot of ways to arrive at a conclusion, which I think is good. It's good to have flexibility. And of course, I have my tight line work stuff for my portfolio, because I need to have tight 3/4. I think somebody said that they liked this little horse picture a bit better, so we can do this one instead as our second piece. Certainly do not mind. Get that one out of there. It's not done yet though. You don't have to show incomplete work. You can always...
I can't believe you've done this.
You can always just link to your Instagram. Just post that there. You have a crazy amount of good stuff there. Certainly do not mind. So we'll make a slight little addendum to our method right now. So we'll throw in a couple of lines at the very beginning, just to kind of get our bearings, okay? And then we'll approach things just as we usually do. Just to kind of speed up the process just a slight bit, because once I do the method in the way that's been intended to do it with, I like to make a little bit of a change just to make sure that it's a bit more adapted to my own specific skill set, and hopefully it goes okay. So always be a bit flexible. So we'll do that for this piece. It's going to be our second piece of today. And of course, you're more than welcome to join in, join the Discord, get the references. Also, if you have any crits, now is the time. I did a crit at the very beginning of the stream. Hopefully you guys were there for that, but I thought it was helpful, a lot of useful information in that. So you're more than welcome to submit things if you would like. Thank you, Talonbean, I appreciate that. Meaning to learn Krita for a while. There's not much to learn, just generally speaking. I have a very rudimentary usage of the program, but I like to paint very akin to traditional stuff. I do use a bunch of brushes. Like if you want to see my layout on Krita, shift views really quickly. So all I have really open are my brushes and my color selector, but I paint usually on one layer. I barely ever use any of the tools over here. I don't modify my opacity or anything. But the only thing that really sets me apart is I like to use a bunch of brushes. So these are my general brushes that I use. Some of them are from brushbacks and some of them are from default. But they're fun, and just about every piece that I've done has been done with the same little setup. Also Solmer, not Solmer, again, Shades. What you could do is, for your selection little problem, what you could do is you could maybe go here to tool options and perhaps slightly manipulate things over here. But since you said it's because everything is zoomed out and it only happens when they're zoomed out, it could just be a simplification error that Krita's doing. But maybe play around a little bit with things over here, because those are the only thing that really govern the way that selection is done on a piece. So perhaps you could kind of manipulate the anti-aliasing or manipulate the mode that is done, and maybe that'll offer you some amount of improvement. But beyond that, I highly encourage you to post on the subreddit and see if the actual devs respond to you, because they usually do. They're very good about that. Just include the tag that's there on the Reddit for questions, and they usually get back to you really, really quickly. So I can offer you that as advice. Okay, I'm going to take a quick sip of water, and then we'll start with the second study. This one's going to be, again, another 45 minutes. My Photoshop would be so slow if I had a canvas like this open with so many images. You know the fun thing about this piece, this canvas, it's only 16 megabytes of occupied size. I don't have a very good computer myself, but Krita has an option called referencing. So all of these are not, I can't paint any of these. My canvas is actually just this up here. That's my canvas. But I can't manipulate any of these past simply modifying their size and their position. So referencing is a really, really cool feature. It's kind of like PureRef, but integrated into your computer. And it's very, very cool. It's integrated into your painting IDE, I mean. And it's a really fantastic feature. It's in Krita versions 4 and above. One of the reasons why I really like it. I'll keep this reference. This reference will be up top, maybe. Okay. Alright, if you guys need the reference, it is on the Discord. Let's go with the second one. 3, 2, 1, and we go. The first thing I'll quickly lay in is just a hint towards the background that's going to be. So I detect a little bit of green, maybe a little bit less than that. We'll keep it nice and warm, and we'll keep it somewhere in a mid-tone, just to give us some opportunity later on to kind of push and pull depending on where you want to go. So this background can be just painted a bit more ambiguously. I don't really care about exactly what we do. Maybe I'll add a couple of slight little hints of texture if I choose to, but most of the time I'm more than happy to just leave this a little bit ambiguous, because again, this is not the key to the piece, right? If the piece is going to fail, it's probably going to fail because the characters aren't developed well enough, and since we are painting for time, it's good to have at least some notion as to efficiency. So I won't spend all that much time, even hunting for the values, and I'm going to maybe slightly tone down the saturation of this later on, but even when hunting for the values, I'm not going to hunt for too long. I'll get something that's vaguely close, and I can content myself with that value. I don't have to wait too much to get the exact proper value, because I mean, how important is that in the grand scheme of things? Even on the character itself, it doesn't really matter all that much. It's fine if things are just relatively in a good position. What really matters is that everything coordinates well with itself. And that's what we're really trying to search for. So this is sufficient for my background right now. I don't really care too much more about it. Let's start detailing some of the information here that's going to go into the piece. So we can add some gesture lines at the very beginning, kind of figure out roughly where everything goes, and then we just simplify the shapes that we see. Let's draw in that nice, lovely, blocky shape of the horse's torso. Can you guys hear my dog barking in the background? Bring his head up here. I'm just going to stay quiet for a second, see if it triggers the mic. I guess not. Let's quickly put in a quick little gesture for his leg right there. Goes right about there. There's a lovely opportunity over here for a bunch of negative shape. It's gonna be nice. Also, there's a bunch of ambiguousness right over there because of the amount of dust that's been kicked up. It's gonna be a really cool piece to just quickly try and get a render out there. Of course, it does help to know the anatomy of the horse a little bit. But even if we don't, as long as the measurement is accurate, should be able to get a piece out there relatively quickly. Am I going to include the second guy in here? Maybe. This guy's going to be really ambiguous though. So I'm gonna just not do him nearly as specifically. Can we draw your dog sometime? We could. I have some pictures of him somewhere around here. We could easily do that. There are a bunch of pets in the Discord that I've yet to start drawing, by the way. I need to do those. I like drawing people's pets. But yeah, I've had little less time for personal stuff because of the portfolio and because of commission work. So time for personal pieces is somewhat limited. But yeah, I'm sure eventually things will quiet down, especially after October. Because my major submission is in October, and then after that's in December, so I actually have a month of breathing room in between. It's gonna be fun for me. Just sit back and relax for a few weeks maybe. Do some casual painting. As opposed to getting up at like 7 in the morning and then painting till about midnight. Which again, I don't really mind that as well. I'm more than happy to do that for a long time. Again, just do a couple of quick little lines, measurements. In Jamaica, good to see you, man. That saddle right there, and that's it. About 3 minutes, and now I can start painting. So again, I didn't do that on a separate layer. That's perfectly fine. Keep things in the same layer, keep things nice and organized. I'll make some basic masks and we'll just start painting. Because these are simply to kind of guide my hand more than anything else. Arguably, I could have used a less crazier value right there. A value that wouldn't interrupt the rest of my piece, but it's fine. Everybody makes mistakes. So I start with just laying in the basic idea of what I want to see. Maybe even coordinate the blue right there with the background. Keep things nice and organized. So I'll think about layering this somewhat intelligently, if I can. So we're gonna add these large little blocks of value really quickly. And hopefully in a way that makes somewhat sense. If you're using Krita, by the way, you can hold Shift to maintain your selection. Every day, just about, yeah. Sometimes I just crash and burn and do basically nothing. But to me, basically nothing is like 4 hours of painting. But yeah, I've really had to set up my game because I want to apply it to multiple places. So I have a lot to do. Lots and lots to do. Not to mention I have a bunch of learning to do in the day as well. Because a lot of my portfolio is going to be design, and I don't do design all that much. So I mean, I might do straight painting on my stream because I'm comfortable and I like winding down with it. But there's so much to learn when it comes to design. Not an easy thing to learn. We're going to select that value for the horse. Let's make it cool, shall we? We'll try one last-ditch effort of picking a desaturated red color. And we'll make that the brightest spot in the drawing. And we'll see if that works for the composition. I think it does to a certain degree. To a certain degree it'll work. But I was doing good with 7 hours a day. It's fine. I mean, you work your way up to it. As with all things, you're going to work your way up to it. Okay, I don't think it's working, to be honest. We'll push that to a bit of a cool. And now we'll leave some of it desaturated red and we'll push some of it into the cool. How about that? Keep it nice and easy. And while we're here, by the way, we can slightly adjust this little shadow value. We'll push it more towards the warms. There's going to be a ton of reflected warm coming from the bottom. So we're going to have to kind of slightly depict that. Fitting in these shadow values really quickly. And of course, there's going to be some lovely occlusions. On a horse, I'm going to paint those occlusions nice and dark warm. I appreciate that, Iris. Thanks for the follow, by the way. Is that Buradanik Var? Appreciate that, thank you. So really quick, nothing to write home about. At this point, I can even start to add in, and in fact, it's almost encouraged at this stage, to throw in my abstraction, right? Just throw in a little bit of abstraction on the back. So we'll pick maybe a slightly, let's say, a purplish value, a purplish blue value, in fact, something like this. We'll slightly adjust the locals over here, just to make it a bit more interesting, right? Because there's going to be a bunch of texture on this horse, and I want to just start putting it in right now. This just makes me happy. And it's good to somewhat treat yourself at the very beginning of the painting, because the more you paint, the more specific you're going to have to become, and the more specific you have to become, the less fun painting becomes. Right? If you ever had to refine line art at any point, refining a line design, That shit is the most soul-crushing shit in the world. It really is. Because you kind of lose out on all the fun, all the design flavor that comes with sketches and comes to silhouettes. Because again, you're kind of confined within your lines too much. Like stuff like this is just not appealing to me, but it needs to be done, you know? It just needs to be done. Abstraction on the booty, you gotta abstract all of them, man. No survivors, no exceptions. Gotta abstract every aspect. Let's push some of that darkness in here. Get that crack nice and gleaming. And we can also throw in some additionals in here. Like I said, I'm gonna be blocking on a lot of these areas a bit harshly with selection. You don't have to, you can just straight paint them. But I straight painted the last one, so this one I'll go a little bit faster and I'll select it like I usually would. No harm in doing it. And I'm also painting with a lot of desaturatids. Unless something is very clearly going to be saturated, I would prefer to desaturate it because that allows me a lot of opportunity later on in the painting to do a bunch of focus manipulation in the painting. Because whenever you make the decision to make something look extremely saturated at the get-go, you're going to run into a problem later on, sometimes at least, depending on the type of artist that you are. But you might indeed run into a problem wherein everything becomes way too saturated, which means the brain doesn't even know where to look. I tend to want to reserve the saturation in the areas that matter, the same way that I would reserve my edges, my hard edges, to the areas that really, really matter. Like this guy's hat and this horse's head are going to be very hard in the painting. That's a good thing to think about as well. Not just that because they're integral and good components of good paintings, but it saves you a bunch of time. I think that's the most important thing that people miss. Like, it's not about just creating a painting that looks accurate, but and that looks like a good piece of work, like a good piece of art. And art requires you to kind of direct the viewer's focus a little bit. You can't just display everything in the same amount of rigorous detail and expect the viewer to pick what the focal point is. It just doesn't work that way. You have to re-engineer it, or reverse engineer it even, as the artist, and say, okay, well, I will intentionally put this much detail here because I want you to look here. I want you to just focus in this particular location. I think that's important. And we've got to do that. We'll desaturate that slightly. There's a whole bunch of ambiguity happening here in the background, so at this point I'm not even gonna wait, because it's a big part and I've been a victim to this, and most likely you have as well. But if there's something that's a part of your drawing, put that in early in your drawing. Don't wait till the end of it. Like, don't perfectly define a hand just to put a glove on top of it, right? It doesn't make any sense. It's a big time waste. So although sometimes we can draw, like, we draw a really good hand or a really good torso, and I'm like, there's no fucking way I ever want to get rid of this torso because I spent so much time on it. It looks beautiful. I really want to include it in my piece. But ultimately, you gotta kill it. You have to kill it. You have to kill your kids when painting. You can't let it get in the way of an effective piece. Let's just do this with a bit more intelligence, shall we? That's a cool brush. Some of this is quite sharp actually, so we'll paint it quite sharp. And I can also sell some of the perspective with this. So add a bit of that darkness. We can do a bit of a trickery here, where I can expand the selection this way. That way I get a soft edge on one side and I get a hard edge on the other side. It's a bit of a trick with selection tool right there. See that? So I can get soft on one side, hard on the other side. It's a really cool trick. I use it all the time to get occlusion shadows. And of course you can argue that that edge is way too hard, and you're right, by the way, you are right. But it's way easier to paint it this way and then soften up this edge than paint it straight. Because I can soften up that edge whenever I want to, right? There's no issue. Okay, let's put in this guy's pants. I think a lot of the blocking in with selection in this piece is going to have an effect on the piece, don't you even question? It's going to have a profound effect on the piece. But I'm willing to see what it looks like. Every decision you make is going to contribute something to the way the piece ends up, unless you spend excessive amounts of time on the piece. Because if you spend time on a piece ad nauseum, eventually all pieces will look the same, IMO. Because if you keep working on something, eventually it arrives at a point where things are just perfectly rendered and there's no like life in the piece anymore. but like the approach will really be evident in like the first, let's say, hour or 2 hours of painting. It really matters, like how you made the decision and what you did there. So I'm doing a lot of my proportioning with negative shape here. So I'm looking at the shapes between shapes to kind of get my proportion. So I haven't really done a specific line art on this, but it should be able to hold as long as I'm not crazily stupid with my decisions. I should be able to hold the piece together just based on negatives. Hopefully, right? That's the big if. Negatives can backfire on you in certain cases, so always have to be wary, which is why I'm painting at quite a far distance away from my piece. There's going to be one really important resolution to happen in this piece, which is resolving the coordination between the horse's head and this dude's hat. But that's the only thing that I had to get over. Everything else is somewhat ambiguous, it doesn't matter. Desaturate that, bring that to more of a light. Doesn't even seem that accurate, right? Doesn't have all that much saturation, so we desaturate again. That seems accurate enough. But I want to push it to more of a red. I see a very mild red tinge to it. And there we go, that looks accurate enough. Okay, so I'll paint in some darkness here. Remember, I just want to paint majority at this stage. I don't even want to go into any detail. Because the amount of information on this piece really tells me that, okay, well, if you paint minutiae anywhere, this piece is going to not get done in the time frame. It's just not going to be done. So it's important to just keep that in mind. This piece will hold. Because like I said, as long as I once over just about everything in this piece, it'll look done. As long as I don't ignore a highlight somewhere, it's going to be done. If I don't ignore an occlusion somewhere, it'll be done. So does it include putting in every little detail, every little speck of grass, every little belt buckle? Well, no, I don't have to do that. But I can still give a piece that looks semi-complete if I just once over everything. To a certain degree. Like for instance, if I don't put in this occlusion shadow underneath the blanket, then it's going to look unfinished. The blanket is going to look very flat, it's not going to look like it belongs. But if I put it in there, then suddenly we're in business. And we're cooking with some fire. Something important to note over here is that I didn't use a gesture too strongly, and that actually is a mistake. I should have used the gesture a lot stronger in this piece. This should have been done, but I didn't. I will forever pay the price. Having a much worse piece as a result of it. But such are the sacrifices we make in life. Also, it's raining quite heavily outside. You can probably hear it. Which could very well mean that the internet's going to go down at any second, so if for whatever reason the stream ends impromptu, I do apologize. But we are streaming from a third world country now, so things are less than ideal. We try to make it work regardless. Try a little bit of the highlight. Like I said, there are certain integral things that we can just once over it, and we can forget about it. Do once over it. Form shadow there. A really good exercise as well. Like, how good are you at spotting what really matters in certain areas? Like, how good are you at simplifying something and prioritizing? Like, am I good at prioritizing in this piece? Well, not really. Have I done the horse's head yet? Well, no. What's the time? 16 minutes? You know, 45-minute drawing? Hell no. That's not good prioritization. That's terrible. What, just did you forget of the horse? Yeah, of the horse. This is the piece in general. Also, here's a tip. If you have a randomized brush, you can make it less random by simply putting the area you want to affect in selection, like that. You can use Shift and Alt to alter your selection, that way you can get the spots where they need to go. See that? Kinda cool, right? Because otherwise this brush does this, which is just stupid. I can't use it. But indeed, the gesture of the horse could have been improved. And the people. This is a very active piece, right? If it's an active piece, I expect the gesture to be just a little bit less ambiguous. Because things are there to a certain degree, and if as far as my measurement goes, I'm good at measuring, so, you know, at infinity, I'll be able to get this piece to look with the same amount of energy. But unfortunately, with the time limit, it's important to kind of cheat my way through it, so gesture is the way to go. I throw in a bit of a dark shadow underneath here. That. And now I can start to fix So tapers are going to be one of those really important things in any piece to fix it, right? Just kind of identify where there's a taper, and that'll really help you check your negative space. For example, this line over here and this line over here, they are coordinated, but this one tapers inward. You see that? So this line and this line, they are coordinated because they have negatives in there. So it's this line and this line, but this one tapers inwards. That helps me correct my horse. And also your reuse of value is going to be really valuable. But try and reuse your values as often as you can. You can see something that's even vaguely similar, just immediately jump on an opportunity and use it again. It's going to afford you huge amounts of time in a piece if you do that. And the piece is just going to look better for it, not to mention. I feel like I'm heavily abusing selections recently. Everybody gets on that kick, so don't worry about it. Everybody gets on the selection bug. I was on it like a few months ago. Angevir is on currently. Like, it just happens, dude. Don't worry about it. Just let it run its course. You're gonna get some really interesting pieces. Did you say you have a YouTube channel? Yeah, I just upload some of the streams there whenever I get the chance to. Thanks, DT. It's not going to be a thing at all. It's just going to be so people can access the. Because some people want to watch certain things again. So in that respect, I wanted a more permanent storage for my fonts. Noticing the selection tool, it's powerful. It is powerful. Nobody's arguing that. It's just that it's a double-edged sword sometimes. Toss it into the fire, Angevir. Destroy it. No. Ram, how's it going, dude? Have you sorted out the ISP problems? It's kind of sorted out itself. I think it was just a really bad day to be streaming. So every time that I stream these days, I am checking right before the stream starts. I check to see whether the ISP or the internet is stable for that day. But I can never guarantee it. In fact, right now it's raining outside, which means that the power company can just switch off the power at any point, which is how it works over here where I live. So unfortunately, I can never guarantee stability, at least for the next few months on stream. So there's going to be a big disclaimer. Well, I'll try and do the best that I can. My precious. Okay. You see I'm flipping really often. And it's a good idea to do. You don't flip. So either you flip always, you never flip, you know? Because if you never flip, you never have to confront the fact that your piece is skewed. That's a thing, right? Also, this needs to be adjusted slightly. But if you're going to flip once, you have to keep flipping, okay? So either be forever ignorant of your faults or always confront them. There's no like two ways about it. It would be so much easier if I just straight painted this, I realize the irony has not escaped me. I could have just straight painted this at any point. Red pillow blue. I'm done, Morpheus. Just hit it with that shadow, hit it with that light, and then move on with your life. That's what I say for this piece. Just hit it a couple of times and it should be done. It should be like relatively okay for you to just continue on with your life's journey. Just don't be bogged down too often in this piece. Because I could be stuck there rendering that denim till the end of time. But I don't want to do that shit. I want to get this piece done. So in that regard, we're going to be a little bit more nimble on this piece. We'll be a little bit more nimble. Let's make sure that we get this little diarrheal streak on the side of his pant leg there. A little bit of a softer brush maybe. So here's a trick of making things stick onto other things. So I sample the local value and I adjust the local value, okay? Because otherwise the value difference will make it think like, or make it look like it doesn't belong there. So I can slightly up this if I want to. But the fact that the values are somewhat coordinated will mean that there's a bigger likelihood of that actually sticking to that particular object. Otherwise, it looks like it's going to float on top, which is not what we want. So be a bit mindful about your saturation as well. That's the basic idea. Get this dude's crack in there. There might be some electrical activity because my tablet screen just flickered and it scared me. Can't wait to have another donation goal for a new tablet after India fries my tablet. Let's add in the main of the horse really quickly. And say add the main in, doesn't mean what you think it means. It doesn't mean I'm gonna draw the main. Hell no. We ain't got time for that, so we're gonna ambiguously put that shit in and hope to God that it works. It's gonna be heavy ambiguous over here. Hopefully it works. It'll work out. Gotta trust, man. You just gotta trust sometimes. You have that blind devotion towards yourself. It was a shame that stream didn't work out. I watched it after the fact, and I could see a very Marco Bucci vibe going about the way you were doing abstractions. Yeah, you want to see that piece finished? It's here. That's the finished piece. It's a little bit tighter than the Bucci. If you want to see a much more Bucci kind of painting, I would say this one is a little bit more looser than that. I've been just trying to focus on loosening up a lot of my studies, just exploring a new illustrative style. So like I said before, I mean, if I want to paint something tight, I can paint it tight. But painting it looser is a bit of a problem, right? Do I have any tight stuff in here? I think I do. Like this is loose armor over here. That's a loose armor piece. And there's a tight armor piece as well, somewhere over here. This is a tight armor piece. Right? Don't you have like an electrical outlet protector? I do, but it's not gonna matter. Because the protector is also from India. Digital, how's it going? Thank you for the kind words, I appreciate that. All of it is pretty tight, bro. Thanks, bro. But yeah. There's a lot of ways of approaching paintings, right? Like these are three different ways of approaching armor, basically. It's like loose, like this is loosest, this is looser, and that's tight. It's just fun to have multiple ways of arriving at it. This is with like basic. It's not clean line work over here. Actually, there's no line work in this piece. If you can imagine that, this is zero line work because I didn't want to do line work that day. I was like, "Fuck it, I've been doing line work all day. I don't want to do any more lines." But it's fine. My visual accuracy is fine without lines. It's not great, but it's passable. If this was a portrait of somebody, I would definitely block it out though. I don't like doing portraits without block-ins. Is that Maddie's OC hugging Max's OC? Yeah, that is correct. Also, here's a cute doggy and ducky if you'd like. Whenever I feel like those Instagram likes are a little bit low, I spend 45 minutes, I do a piece, and I'm like, yep, there you go. Have a bone. Game that system. Erica, how's it going? Good to see you. But yeah, this is Maddie's OC hugging Max's OC. It was a fun piece. And there's Mia as well. There's Mia as Bowsette. Yeah, the work's been decent recently. I've been really liking my horses. I've been studying horses in my free time as well. Studying structure and construction. Structure and, gesture and painting. So it's been a lot of fun, kind of like putting those into pieces. To my eyes, the woman is the loosest. This one was actually done in the illustrated style, yeah. The thing about loose armor is that as loose as you paint armor, it's more loose in paint strokes. Loose doesn't mean like blurry. It really means that you're doing something with the least amount of strokes, basically, as you can. So the face on me is actually quite tight. Let's see the real clincher. Also, there's a random bit of desaturation in there. I have no idea why that's there. It's kind of really bothering me. Did you finish the tiger you started on stream, or did you start again? I actually started again on that one. This one I started again. I really don't like to... I don't know, a lot of people would say restart your pieces. I'm sorry, they would say like step away from your pieces, take some time, you know, away from your piece. I really don't like that. It doesn't help me at all. I like sitting down and finishing my piece and then getting up. Because it really like throws me to, like maybe the most I'll take is maybe 5 minutes, but if I sit down for something, I usually finish it. And I prefer to work that way. And I'm not alone in that. I know a few people do that. Like Raiko, for example, works that way. Except he sits down for 12 hours and I sit down for like 4 maybe. That's why some of my commission work I don't think is like very good. Because my commission work has to be done over multiple sittings because I have to go back and forth with the client and whatever. So I don't like doing that, if I'm honest, but there's no way of getting around that, right? I can't just paint the commission work through. Maybe I should ask them, you know? Maybe I should say like, this is exactly what I'm gonna do, and I'll see you in 4 hours, and then bam, commission piece over. Okay, let's continue this. Okay, so let's get this away from the whole vectoriness of it. Thank you, Erica. That was a decent piece. I don't mind that at all. Okay, so I have to include some mild little shifts here. But we have enough bases. Now we can just do some mild shifts on the value. We should be able to bring this into something of a finish. Because I really have enough information here. I don't really need all that much more. Just take advantage of what I already have in the canvas, and we should be able to take this into some amount of finish. At this point, I will actually crop inward. So for 24 minutes of painting, we've actually gotten a surprising amount done. It's not very fast, but it's not super slow either. Not too unhappy with it. We'll crop inward slightly, and I'm going to slightly just delineate this guy a little bit. You got that lovely crotch and hamstring shadow. It's a big fan of that in general. Just going to put that in there. Never forget your crotch shadows. You would be remiss in your duties. Put it in there. I think on the other side, we gotta just hit everybody's crotch just a couple of times. Like I said, you gotta detail the area of focus on pieces. So, you know, all the pers that are gonna look at this are gonna look at very specific areas, so you gotta throw them a bone. And just simply get a few of these highlights in order. And adjust those values, make sure the lights are reading as lights. At this point, your value should be well in your mind, so it doesn't make any sense to lowball things. The light should look like they're in light, and the dark should look like they're in dark. That end, I'm going to be very strict with the values that I choose. And I have a good idea of where to choose them, right? Because I already have enough on the piece set in stone already, so I can actually make decisions a little bit quicker. Okay, let's not give him Wolverine claws, okay? Maybe it's better to do that with selection. And God bless selection. What would I do without you? You know, Angevia, you might be right. Maybe I should go back to the dark side. So again, don't just put a single stroke there. Always justify it. Always add some amount of light and shadow onto it so it doesn't look too awkward. But beyond that, you're not obligated to put a huge amount of information on things. Embrace the dark side. A little bit done with negatives. And throw in some highlights in a couple of areas here. I mean, really, just to finish something out, that's all I would be doing, just tossing highlights and occlusion shadows. As a dramatic effect, I'm just making something look much more complete than it is. Jin's last piece are very strong in gesture and movement. Appreciate you. A nice hard little shadow right there. We can toss it in there real quick. And again, like I said, we gotta address these values. While I would love to be perfect and choose these values appropriately at the very beginning, I am a mortal man full of flaws. What is a man but a miserable pile of secrets? To that end, I gotta be a little bit careful. Also, I just realized this isn't the right leg, that's the left leg. Silly me. We are 28 minutes into looking at this picture and I just realized that. That's a big whoopsie. That's my bad. I can take that out of my check. There you go. Nobody saw a thing. That was always there. I knew exactly what I was looking at. You can't tell me different. I think the imperfections make the art more interesting and beautiful. Yeah, definitely. I think imperfections need to be calculated. There's certain things. So, when you mean imperfection, what you mean to say is abstraction, meaning that you're not painting things directly, you're kind of evoking them. Or maybe you just mean imperfections as in mistakes. I think trading the line is important. Because there are certain things you can abstract upon, certain things you cannot, certain things you can be ambiguous about, and certain things you can't. So, I'd always advise to beginners to paint tight, always, and then loosen up with the progression of time once you understand more fundamentals. I didn't notice either, probably because I was busy looking at the horses behind. There we go, that's my boy right there. Both? You're looking at both their behinds? I mean, I guess. I guess you could do that as well. Who am I to judge? I know, Lord. No. I'll go back on it, you just admitted it. Throwing a bit of light, even plumes of dirt, even clouds of dust, even they have occlusions. Even they have, well, maybe not occlusions, but they have shadow and they have areas of light. That's, I think, fairly important to note. Oftentimes we just draw these as a bunch of dots, but these bunch of dots, they got feelings too, man. They got feelings too, they got aspirations, they got goals, they got dreams. This little dot over here, he wanted to be a doctor. This one over here, wanted to be an engineer. Both abstractions and imperfections? Yeah, I would agree. I don't like super perfect drawings. I have a huge pet peeve with things that are way too perfect. I just do not like looking at them. I don't like, it's not like I'm averse to the idea of things being hyper perfect and polished, but it's not the kind of work that I want to do personally. If you want to make things look hyper polished, more power to you. Don't let me tell you how to draw. But again, speaking of our preferences, what I prefer to see is things a little bit more ambiguous, a bit more painterly. That sort of stuff really gets my goose going. You guys have that phrase? Okay, I want to deepen up this blue here. It's an obnoxious amount of blue. I'm not gonna lie, it's a ridiculously crazy amount of blue that I don't want to paint, so I'm not gonna paint it. I refuse to paint that blue in, and you can't make me. I'm also toning down the amount of contrast in the background, by the way. While I do want some idea of that there, I don't want the eye to just jump there. So I'm actively turning down the saturation, turning down the crazy amount of contrast right there. Okay, we're gonna give this guy his boots and cats and his boots and cats. I can just do this ambiguously. There's a time to show your education on your piece, and this is not one of them. Very saturated blue. Indeed, yes sir. Very saturated blue indeed. Couldn't have said it better. Like, you get a lighter value over there. Remember, what is light, what is dark has to always be clearly defined in the drawing. Cannot be remiss in our duties of defining them. But again, that shit's a little bit too harsh in terms of its overall quality. I'm not a sir, mister. You ma'am. Are you gonna check all this time, Blow? Because I'm gonna be really disappointed in you. Because that means I've lost a good man today. You made me think of Occupy when he said boots and cats. Yes? Wait, are you kidding me? Are you joking right now? Because I'll be really upset. I'm gonna be actually really upset. No, you're trolling me. 100% troll. No. No! Lost a good man today. Joking, okay. God damn it, I keep losing friends because I keep turning into girls. This is the worst.
Oh, fuck. I can't believe you've done this.
Hey, thanks, Hackle. Appreciate you, man. 35 minutes. Getting it done. Poet, how's it going, dude? Boy, POI. Is there a reason why you flip the screen sometimes? Yes, indeed, there is a reason. Because everybody suffers from a natural inclination towards the left and the right. Loomis actually has this in his book. You'll see a few people that teach art, they have this kind of note in their book that everybody has a slight inclination towards the left and the right, and to combat that inclination, I always like to flip the canvas so I always have fresh eyes on it. Otherwise, things tend to go slightly skewed in one direction or the other. And beyond that, it's a great way to get fresh eyes on a piece. Perhaps you're over-focusing on a particular place in the piece. Perhaps it's difficult for you to really get a good handle on what's going on in a particular part of the piece. So it's a great way of kind of getting fresh eyes on certain aspects of the piece. So 2 reasons. Hopefully that makes some sense. This dude's wearing a checkered shirt, really not making it easy for him to be painted really quickly, but I can quickly abstract that using a bunch of brushy trickery. So I'm not going to be straight painting this dude. You got me confused with somebody else if you think that I'm going to be straight painting that. Cool, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think it does. It's a good practice to keep. Some people don't need to. I definitely need to. I have a big right inclination. Really big one. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I held my school bag on one of my shoulders as a kid and permanently fucked up my rotator cuff. I have no idea. But I know it to be true, so I gotta compensate for it. Especially when I'm painting for time, right? Gotta be aware of that. Those best practices. So it's just part of my process. And it doesn't take any time out of my piece because it's just Control F. It's bound to a hotkey. So I can do it very quickly. Stonefly, aka Kai, how's it going? I'm good, just chilling and having lunch. Fine, while I wait for my afternoon college class. Figured I'd look at Twitch to pass the time. Well, welcome, you're more than welcome to stop by. I appreciate you coming over here. A lot of places you could have gone. Those book bags are way too heavy. Especially Indian book bags, man. Because my school was very devious because they used to print out the textbooks that we had to use every single course, so they had a monopoly on it basically. So they would just obviously make us buy as many pages as we could because they wanted to make as much money off the books. So everybody had like basically 3,000 pages in their bags every single day, and we had these giant, like enormous, like U.S. Army style backpacks every single time we went to school. It was just obnoxious. But on the bright side, I had sick traps at the end of my my school. I was fat as fuck, so you couldn't see them. But I have sick trap development. How's it going, Stonefly? As someone who has to drag a book bag or backpack to class, I can confirm this. My posture is probably fucked. To this day, when testing bench maxes, for example, so my max on the bench is the max I've ever benched is about 320. So 320 pounds is my max bench. And I swear to God, when I hit my maxes, every single time my right goes up no problem, but my left starts to drag the heavier it goes. And I really believe it's because of my fucking book bag. I honest to God believe that's why it's happening. Even in the squat, on my max squats, my bar sits unevenly on my back. I swear it's the fucking book bag. Okay, let's just blow something out of proportion here, because this is getting way too straight. I don't like it when things are straight. Don't take that out of context. But I don't like it when things are too defined. I want to just mess this up a little bit. Because when things are so clean on this side, it kind of ruins my read of the painting. So I'm going to slightly be a little hellion here and mess things up. Because this guy is not the focus, this guy is the focus. So the more ambiguous the steward is, the more the attention is going to be brought to the where I want it to go. Because we're not in the market with this kind of style of painting to be drawing things individually. We don't care about things in isolation. We care about the read graphically about things, but we don't care about drawing specifics. So in that regard, we're going to be a lot more careless, not careless, but ambiguous with our strokes here. There's a lot of stuff to kind of keep in mind with this kind of piece as well. There's just so much going on. So we have to be a little bit careful about where we spend our time as well. Like we're missing some components here which make things look a little bit awkward. For instance, we're missing the occlusion over here, I'm sorry, the form shadow on the side of his leg. And that's a big part of this guy's body, right? It's a big part of the read on this dude. The more time I spend over there, the less time I can spend on this dude. And this dude is part of my focal point, so it's... I mean, his leg isn't, but it's fairly important to put some time into it. Right? Because even like, there's so many ways of directing attention on a piece. But even amount of strokes, right? Amount of strokes, aka detail, right? Because detail is amount of strokes. Even that is enough to direct attention. So if you spend all this time in a place that isn't really important in the piece, then you just wasted that time. Because it's making the piece weaker, not stronger. Bring that saturation a bit more. We'll desaturate that. That. Maybe just me, but my posture seems to be curved back a bit, as in my shoulders are pushed back somewhat. Could be due to the weight dragging them back down. It could be. Usually that might mean you're hunched over a lot, which is weakening up your pectoralis major. So I would suggest that if you go to the gym, increase those upright rows, get some of that upper body strength in there. Or just start military pressing. That usually helps. Yo, these edges over here are way too strict. You gotta loosen up, edge boys. You gotta loosen up right there. Because you're bothering me with how strict you are. Don't laugh at a man's pain, Erica. Hashtag me too. Actually, I have an ear infection. Feels bad, man. I hope it's getting better. Let's throw some occlusions just to show our intelligence. It's important to do that, you know. It's important after you're like somewhat done with the piece, just to flex a little bit on people that weren't born into privilege. Show a bit of intelligence with some occlusions here and there. I'm laughing at his comment after when he said, "How's everyone else?" Sure you are. I believe you. But the question is, will the courts believe that story? I'm gonna slightly indicate that leg over there. Slightly, right? With a bit of airbrush selection. You don't have to be you don't have to be heavy-handed with it, but just a little smidge, you know, just a little smidge is okay. 42 minutes. How fun is that? We have like almost a fully developed piece in a nominal amount of time. No, don't side with her, poet. Don't side with her. Don't do it. If you do it, you're lost. Jets, how's it going, dude? How's the piece? Is fixing your posture ever possible? It's so difficult to mind it all the time. It is possible, yeah. It's definitely possible. And it's easier to do it via strengthening your musculature as opposed to actively thinking about it. So, while it's definitely possible, the thing is, like, when you sit in a certain way for too long of a time, you're weakening some muscles and you're strengthening up some other muscles, which means that you actively have to fight against yourself to get back into good posture. So what's better than that is simply to develop the muscles that are weaker. So just doing certain exercises that are targeted will help a lot. Like, I used to have a very terrible hunch in my back, and I fixed that just by deadlifting. Like, I deadlifted enough, like really strengthened up my scaps, strengthened up my rhomboids, strengthened up my infras, and I'm fine now. In good posture. So it's basically like burning a candle off at both ends, right? When you do it that way. So as opposed to like forcefully fight against the strong muscles, just develop the weak muscles. That kind of thing. That's what I would say, at least. That's how I fix my posture. Honestly, right now, I think I stand way too straight like a fucking robot sometimes. Although the clothing store is open today, thank God I'll be able to buy clothes. Hell yeah. Aren't you like 7 feet tall though, Erica? Or is that Brandy? I forget. W.C. Lee Art, the boy right there. How's it going, dude? Great job on the sketchbook stuff I've been seeing on the Instagram. Really, really well done. Big fan of all that stuff. Looks mighty cool. Brandy, I'm only 5'7". Only. They're taller than jets. Okay, I'm gonna add some angry, energetic lines. This is the time in the piece where you get out all your inner rage about how terrible the world is. So, with this stroke, I'm angry about the Amazon fires. With this stroke, I'm angry about the state of poverty in the world. With this stroke, I wish there was more equality between men and women, etc., etc., you know? Just gonna get your frustrations of the world out of there. You know, just show your, just get all that social media posturing out of the way, get all that virtue signaling, just get all of that and just get out on your piece, you know? James, did you finish your portfolio? Of course not, hell no. There's so much work to be done. I was doing 3/4 today though, stuff like this. Designing armor and stuff. You know, there's a time for regression in pieces. This is the time right there. Okay, well, we're done. I was going a little bit about time. These 60-minute studies are getting more and more complicated. Yeah, definitely are. Because I really want to like check. Because I know I can do certain pieces. Now here's the impetus behind all of this, okay? So I realized that when I was picking pieces on Instagram or on like on Pinterest or whatever, when I was picking those pieces, I was picking them in a way that was like, can I paint that in 45 minutes, right? That's what I was doing. I was like, can I paint that in 30? Can I paint that in 45? And the more I did it, the more I realized I kind of hate doing that. Because I don't want to pick something I know I can paint. I want to pick something that I know I can't paint and then paint it anyway. So I'm never going to improve in terms of my prioritization if I don't like pick things that I actively don't think I can manage, right? Because that's how I got here to begin with, right? I got here to this level of like moderate expertise by doing things that I didn't think I could do. So in that regard, I've been really trying to like push just how complex my pieces are and to see like where my comfort zone is and where does it break. and then after I figure out where it is, I'll just write that line. Because I don't like the idea of like being able to do something that I know I can do. There's no fucking point. Because I'm trying to study to improve, right? Anyway, that's my second piece right there. It's a fun one. I do like the horse in this one. This dude is like, I would really prefer this piece like this, if I'm gonna be totally honest. I think it's a much stronger piece. What do you guys think? This is just sitting in the background like Bigfoot, escaping the canvas. Like, look at me. Like the Instagram crop today is this. This is the Insta crop. Your Instagram vision. Enhance. See? This is like when you go to somebody's house and you see like cut pictures. That's like you. That's your dog, and that's your ex. Alright, F's in the chat for my boy over here. I'll make it quick, right? If you want to make it quick, we'll do the classic one. We go over the wrist and over the neck. Okay, now we did it humanely. It's humane dispatch. Okay, humane dispatch, like a lobster. We just shoved a knife into its head. And now we bid our farewells. Your sacrifice will never be forgotten. You were sacrificed to make the piece much stronger. We will never forget you. I miss you already. I didn't even care about him enough to center the fucking text on his tombstone. Feels bad, man. I totally did that. I cropped out my ex. Okay, well, at least we didn't have to shoot the horse, right? So it's fine. It's fine in the movie if a person dies. If a dog dies in the movie, everybody cries, right? So it's okay. It just is a little bit of a bluish splotch right there. Nobody knows. Nobody knows except for us. You don't have to tell anybody what we did here today. We killed a man. We snuffed out God's light of life, and we did so just to make things look prettier. What have we become as a race? Do we care more about the appearances that we portray externally as opposed to the value of a life? Anyway, let's name this ASD, 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 ASD 3334, because 33 was taken. Inconvenient spot for a tombstone. Why do you think the horse is so afraid? Kill the human? Yeah, I think it's better without him. There was not enough time. I hate it when the dog dies. I hate where the red fern grows. That's pretty bad. Also, the movie with Will Smith and the terrible CGI zombies, I Am Legend. The dog dies in that one, and it's a German Shepherd. I love German Shepherds. Had a small pile of dust where he was? Okay. John Wick. It's like the Indian version of it. Hey guys, did you see John Wick? He killed 3 people with some butter chicken. Alright. That'd be great if they replaced all the Russians in John Wick with Indians. That'd be fucking great. I've seen him kill a man with some naan bread. Alright, well, that's piece number 2. Piece number 3 is this. It's even more complex. Shout out to my hatred of myself. But here we go. I've seen him kill a man with bread. Daddy, please, пожалуйста. He's not the elephant man. He's the man you sent to kill the fucking elephant man. How's it going, Mia? Good to see you, man. Alright, well, we have said our goodbyes to this piece. Let me just quickly drag it in here. And we can do study number 3. Пожалуйста? Yeah, I know a bit of Russian. I know здравствуйте, I know пожалуйста, спасибо. And the usual dobro вечер. Is that a Turkey tribesman? No, you need to say it in an Indian accent. Don't tell me what to do, alright? I'm tired of white people giving me orders, Anjivir. Outside the bedroom. Is it a Turkey? It might be, it might be. I'm not sure. Очень, очень хорошо. Yeah, there you go. Alright, let's put this one over here. That's piece number 2. Damn, I love fucking horses. Okay, don't clip that. I love drawing horses. God damn. I fucking love horses. Okay? Relax. Relax, alright? I'm not one of those horse girls on Instagram. Phrasing, yeah. Are we doing phrasing anymore? Okay, let's just simply do a quick little crop here. We can start with piece number 3. Slip of the tongue? Slip of something, alright. Alright, let's do the next piece. Do we have this anywhere? Oh, there it is. That ain't bad, is it? Would you hang that on a shelf? Would you hang that? Would you put that in your, on your fridge? On your magnet? Would you let your children near this picture? I think you would. I think it's okay. I'll pass on this one, I think. Shades, don't be a bitch. Oh, also, I think we have people in the Discord that did this study with us. Oh yeah, let me show you. Does that work? Does that work? Nope. That's the wrong thing. Hold on. Where's my goddamn scene? Oh, there it is. There's Shades. Good job, dude. I want to slightly caution you against overusage of canvas texture because it tends to look filtered. So be a little bit like refrain. Just refrain ever so slightly. For a brief moment I saw infinity. For a brief moment. But otherwise, really good job. It's because this is a really, really busy reference, man. So just even giving it a shot I think is good. But I do like the simplification. I do see the selection edges. Not bad at all. Lovely energy. Really good job. My boy Shades there. His name is not Saul Mayer. Don't get it wrong, otherwise I'll be disappointed in you. Also join the Discord, by the way. We do studies together. You should do some too. I felt the focus is kind of inverted. It could be. But the canvas patterns? So do you mean that it's focusing on the wrong thing? Or do you mean that... Oh, I know what you're saying. You're saying that the places where you haven't put the canvas texture look more interesting to you because everything else is canvassed. That kind of idea. I get you. And yeah, you're correct. It's a good observation. Yeah, this piece is going to be a nightmare. But we're going to try and do it anyway. Fastest sword known to man. I have taught DT well. DT got really mad that I used to beat him to shower commands, so he trained. As I slept, he trained. As I enjoyed my time in parties and going to bars and drawing pretty little pictures, he trained the blade. And now I come to him asking for his help and he'll whisper in my ears. Maybe. The jams. My piece is coming together, but I have some questions about color palette in portraits. I don't like using deep burgundy colors because it just doesn't seem natural to me. I am considering cooling everything down. Is that a common thing? Show me the piece. Now's the time to do so, by the way, between my studies. Ah, so it was a Draugr murder boss Death King scenario, of course. Yeah, the classic. Referring to the handbook, that's what it was. I had a training montage, yeah. DT is full on, nothing personal. I should do sub drawings again. I remember the last time, what did I draw you as, DT? Didn't I give you like a sword and things? Was I basically telling the future, DT? Remember that time? That I painted people from the stream, I painted you and I gave you a sword? I think I was channeling my inner oracle right there. I saw a picture on Instagram this morning of a woman in a red dress on a horse I thought you would paint beautifully. Send it to me. Maybe I will paint it. Even Rocky had a montage, it's true. Shout out to Sylvester Stallone, man. Went from doing like basically softcore gay pornography to being an action superstar. No, I see you, gents. You're okay with me showing this off on stream, right? Yeah? Okay. Let's look at this. Was it me? I don't remember, my memory sucks. I can maybe find it somewhere. That's Jet's speech, by the way. Let you guys enjoy that for a second while I'm just trying to search for this real quick. Man, this was so early on though. This was like maybe March, not even March, no, August last year. I don't know if I have this saved. I found a lot of cool portraits though. A lot of cool paintings as well. Like this is James doing a paint over for me when I was painting Sarah Jean. What a bro, he was helping me out. There's a painting of Steph. This is like my first digital paintings when I first came back. This Steph portrait was my third one. Because I'm going through my old folders. This is last year? Yeah. This stuff is from last year. It's all bad, but like stuff like this. This is something I did with Bonnie actually. That was a warm up on her stream. But I got better quick though. Stuff like that was in my third month of painting, I think. But it's not like I've never painted before, so I had a head start. I don't think I can find it actually, DT, but I know I've painted you before. Because from the same line of paintings, Vic got his painting as well. And he still uses that one. Oh, I wish I could find it, it's a shame. Hey look, I have my first painting. This is my first painting. Going back in digital. That's Kate right there, it's my buddy Kate. Go follow her if you haven't. It's shitty, what are you guys talking about? It's a crappy painting. Yeah, but it's the first one, so you can't really blame it. I guess I can't find it. That's unfortunate. I'm sure it's somewhere here in my folders. But I just don't know where. Dude, I have so many paintings that I just haven't posted anywhere. Like, I have so many like really quick ones, man. Just littering like my my folders. Like, some of them are just bad. Some of them are okay. Yeah, but it's good to see work that I don't see very often, because the work that's like I post, I see every day because I go on Instagram, but there's some stuff that I just never see. It's kind of cool. I don't have my old digital save, which I regret. I didn't manage to find one of my college drawings from right when I started drawing. It looks like a 5-year-old boy drew it, but I was in my early 20s. I mean, I get that. But hey, look at you now. You're basking in the everlasting sunlight of expertise. God, there's some bad work in here though. Like what even is this? Excuse me? What was the plan there? Oh, this is Pam as Lucia. I was wondering what was it looking at? That's Pam as Lucia. There's AJ's dog, Bailey. Like a bunch of paintings that I've never posted anywhere. Like a random anatomy gem thing. This actually looks sick. This looks really sick. I like that one a lot. We're definitely in the path to true expertise. I hope so. Remember that DD study at all? Must have been a really long time ago. It was. That Lucio, the treasure. Hey, look, there's a painting of Bonnie. I have like altogether maybe 10 or 15 paintings of Bonnie. I think I've drawn the girl a little bit too much. Does it even look like her? There's some like random traditional work for some reason in here. I think this is also an anime gem, maybe? I think this was charcoal. Not quite sure what this is doing here, but hey, that's not too bad, is it? So I'm in the rabbit hole right now looking at old pieces. Hey, look, a butt! Hell yeah. This is one of Bill Nash's butts. It's not Bill Nash's butt, but it's a butt that he took a picture of. I paint a lot of Nash work, by the way. I do a lot of Bill Nash paintings. This is a private study when I was being a hot teacher for Jets. Just I did the study in private. I don't even know what this is. Oh yeah, I think Polish picked the reference of a girl's face and I couldn't paint girls at that point, so I think I sent this to him. God, that looks terrifying. It looks like Michael Jackson a little bit. I like the eyes though, those eyes aren't bad. Like there's no structure to them, but it's not bad. I kinda like the way the highlights are. Ashley, how's it going? Good to see you. This was the first piece that I did in a series of almost 3 months of continuous daily streams. This was the first. I remember that. I came back from America and I sat at my desk and I said, okay, I'm going to be streaming every single day. And I did that for 3 months. That's pretty good. It's one of my favorite paintings of all time. The painting of James right there. I have so many like master studies as well, just sitting around. That's a master study of The Sword of Mars by Frank Frazetta. There's a study of Blade Runner. Blade Runner 2020, a compositional study right there. I have a few of them lying around. Here's a color study, again of Frazetta. There's not much done to it, it's just a color study. I was just painting this to show somebody, but the background is what's important here. Just some human studies, since I do a lot of painting on stream. Some birds, I guess. Oh, this is heavy. This is in my selection zone right now. This is in back when I was using a bunch of selection tool. So you guys, some of you guys are in this zone right now. I don't think I ever asked what drew the drawing. I don't know. I think it's just creative expression, right? I've just been doing it for a long time. Oh, I found my Ellie Pop portrait. You guys know Ellie Pop from Twitch? I drew her. I think this is my most accurate portrait of all time. Just tell me if I can improve it though. But I think it's about the most perfect thing I've ever drawn. Ellie is really short, by the way, but she has huge hands and feet, so it makes sense. It's very accurate. Trust me. It's all downhill from here. You're not wrong. Did you guys ever see this piece over here? My Bloodhound piece from Apex Legends. This piece did really well on Twitter and Reddit. It's not bad. You came a really long way. Really interesting to see your progress. Yeah, so I think about here is when I started like dabbling around with more saturated colors. This is Kato. That it's a girl that James likes staring at. Johansson art. For good reason. Kato Punk, yep. We got a new pair of titties, by the way. They're even bigger than the last ones. Can't say I'm the biggest fan, but I'm not a titty guy, so I don't know. I'm not an expert in titties. There's a surprise Pikachu. You don't do James like that? I mean, I look at him too. I look at her too. I'm following her on Instagram. There was a time in my drawing career that every single day I would wake up and I would warm up with a Bill Nash picture. So this is one of Bill Nash's portraits of high heels. So I did a study on those. Here's a study of my favorite painting of all time, but done differently. It's a study of Mead Schaefer's Count of Monte Cristo, but done with Reaper from Overwatch. I might have done this on stream, I don't remember. But that's a really cool piece, though. Actually, one of my favorite pieces that I've ever done. It was a really quick one, but it was cool. Here's another study of a big butt. You know, those are always good. Have you heard Apex is an absurd paywall? Nope, haven't heard it. I don't play the game anymore. I don't think anybody's seen this picture. This is a picture of a streamer named Coolness. He's like a half Viking dude, and I gave him a really quick portrait because I thought it would be fun. Here's another Cheeto, aka Kato, quick piece using line, by the way. I was experimenting with the idea of using line because I was studying a lot of line decker and mainly line decker, and I guess a little bit of that. The other guy. Who's the other guy? I'm struggling for words here. There's so many good artists that I sometimes get them misorganized. Hold on. It'll come to me. It's the one that Erica hates. Rockwell, isn't it? Normal Rockwell. Of course I can't find the picture now. How about a baby sleeping next to a horse? We could do that as well. Yeah, Norman Rockwell is what I was thinking about. So sometimes I use lines to reinforce. I have no idea what this piece is. I don't even know. Oh, this looks pretty sick. That was kind of cool. Did I have forgotten about all of these pieces? Sarah's gone. I'm gonna get a bit of food. It's fine, Ten. It's good to see you back. Here's another Gandalf in the same style. Oh, I have a bunch of crits in here as well. Here's the commission I never got paid for. After this piece, I started taking money in advance for commissions. It was only like fucking like 50 bucks as well. Like, why the fuck wouldn't you pay me for that? Come on. You serious? Here's a gift piece with a bunch of dogs. To be fair, this is a terrible gift in hindsight. So it's a very not good piece. Here's a robot with a big butt. Would you draw a cyberpunk background? Would I? Yeah. But not like... I mean, I'm going to be doing environments soon, but I don't want to spend that much time on something. There's a tiger that looks kind of fucked up, but you know. Here's my Bible here. If ever they dig up my grave of all my artwork, this is going to be like the Rosetta Stone of my art adventures. Which is basically my little mantra when it comes to... Jesus, I can't find it. There you go. When it comes to measurement, my Bible that I lived for 2 months and 200 pages on. The 5 big ones. Negative space, plumb lines, shape association, separation of light and dark, and general impression. I've spent so much time learning these things. It's actually ridiculous. Because I was just so bad at all of these. Hell yeah, man, my master's studies. Arguably my favorite things that I've ever done. This particular Hyacinth one, this one is by Hyacinth Regard. He's a 18th century painter. But one of my all-time favorite paintings. It's actually my phone background. I really like this one. It's your boy Rembrandt. Your boy Rembrandt right there. We have some Quaker studies over there. We have some quick studies of Irene, I believe that is, by Sargent. I have a fucking duck here that I painted for Bonnie, I think. Why do I feel more confident to draw on an iPad Pro than a Wacom? Well, because you're drawing on a screen as opposed to drawing with disconnection. Got any of their PPRs? Those PPRs? What are you talking about, Mia? You lost me. Tisha, how's it going, Tisha? Good to see you. I hope you're doing well. Here's another butt. Hell yeah, I love looking at butts. This actually was done in from imagination, basically. Oh, Peter Paul Rubens? My bad. No, I don't think I have any Rubens. I have this guy though. Who is this by? I don't even remember. This is by one of those obscure dudes, right? It's also one of my favorite mouse studios, by the way. Look at that saturation. Look at that that cheek simplification. Hell yeah. We are all doing very well. How have you been? I've been good. Been good back in India for the time being. But it's been good. I actually want to find this out. I feel like this guy's name sounds for John, but I could be mistaken. Jules Joseph. Yeah, it's Jules Joseph, that's his name. Vittoria Colonna, that's what it was. It is pretty. Here's a derpy elephant that may or may not be dead. I think it just crashed my computer. How much was the time limit for this? Oh, 10 minutes. It's good that I wrote it right there. Why is it so goddamn big? That's my question. One of my favorites of yours is the Ashley portrait. I think I was just looking at that. I was trying to search for pieces that I don't usually show on stream. Oh, zoom out, de-enhance. Where's my canvas? There it is. I think I saw my Ashley piece somewhere there. Here's the J. Hansen art as Sekiro. You guys have played that game? Also, I realized I need to do this crit for you, chat, so I'll get to it in a second. I'm sorry I've been waiting too long. Dude, I found the folder, DT, of all the references, but I can't find my painting of you for some reason. That's really strange. I've enjoyed this. I'm glad. I could have sworn I found that the picture of Ashley at some point. I don't know where that went. Here's a mantis shrimp. I draw a mantis shrimp each year, basically. That was my mantis shrimp of this year. It's a quick 30-minute piece, but it was fun. This, I think, is my favorite painting I've ever done. The painting I'm most proud of, basically, is this one over here, 4-hour piece of armor. And which I can't, for some reason, I can't move it, so you can't see the face. It's a little bit weird. It's this piece over here. That's my favorite painting. I actually know the girl that painting's off. I contacted her. She is a very nice lady. It's Wielder of Steel on Instagram, by the way. Really cool. I did this fan art for Ashley. Tens, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for the sub. I do appreciate that. Very kind of you. Ashley fan art right there. Enjoy emotes. I do appreciate your continued support. September. Yeah, it's true. It is September, so you can sub at a discount if you guys want to sub and get my bag emote, which is basically the only reason to sub. I have so many unfinished paintings, by the way, that nobody's ever seen. Like I have, I mean, everybody has that, but I have a portrait of Steph. Because whenever Steph feels down, I don't know, she's not like a close friend, but Steph is just a really good streamer. And I really enjoy her streams. I think she's like one of those really good-hearted people that always make my day, so I never kind of let that slide. Whenever somebody like helps me out or whatever, or I like their work, I usually try and give them something. So these kind of pieces are on the down low, but some of them never get finished, unfortunately. Here's a piece for Haston. that never got finished really. But you can kind of make out that it's him. I got some random pieces in here. I guess these are pieces from imagination. Hey, here's Chris Pants. That's a gift piece for Chris Pants right there. I think this one's actually sent. This one looks a lot like him, by the way. If you know your boy Chris Pants. He's a cool dude. I drew a quick little piece for Wise Carrot. Chris is a really good artist. He suffered a stroke, I think earlier this year. So a really unfortunate turn of events, but this dude is a really cool inspiration. Really, really awesome dude. He's been fighting it like a champ, really been getting back into the flow of things. So yeah, mad respect to the dude. So I DM'd him this picture on Instagram because I thought that would be nice. It's not a very good portrait, but it's not very bad either. The dapple light picture right there. IB, thanks dude, thanks for the sub. Here's another master study, because I have a bunch of these laying around. This was a master study for colors of backgrounds right there. That's kind of cool, right? Here's a picture of Jay Hansen art as the alien that does the dance. You know what I'm talking about. And if you don't, then consider yourself lucky. Here's a velociraptor with tits. And high heels, apparently. Good morning, dude. Hope you're doing well. I don't know what this is. Hold on, I need to zoom in. What? You know, you're so occupied with thinking that what you could, you didn't think what you should. I think this is all the Game of Thrones characters for some reason. I don't remember when I did this. This is like Brienne and... Oh, I kind of like that Arya. It's a cool gesture. And the Hound and Jon Snow and Tyrion. That's not bad, actually. I like this this Drogon sketch. There's Jorah Mormont being hyper friend-zoned. Fun stuff. I don't know who I drew this for. Was this for you, Ashley? It might have been. It's either for you or Chronorpheus. No brand equals failure? Well, you know, he had the best story, so I couldn't draw him in there. I know this one was for Bonnie because it's titled Bag. I think one of us had just finished watching The Meg. Remember the days that your boy used to just paint with selection tool exclusively? That was a good period, dude. That was a really good period because it ended up with some really cool artwork. Like the shark it's pretty sick. Like that's a really sick shark. I could put that on a postcard. Easy peasy. I should maybe go back to that. See if I can still do it to the same degree. Because invariably I'm gonna lose some skill in that kind of technique, right? But I think I could do it still. It's pretty sick looking. Same thing for these kitty cats. Like those aren't bad. Very stylized. I love these two. They're really cool. Very yeah, very nicely done. Here's Jay Hansen art and the Epic Beast as Kratos and Atreus, basically. Unfortunately, Jay Hansen art has no eyes, and the Epic Beast was turned into a generic Asian boy. But hey, it's not too bad. Look at that background though. Look at that selection tool usage. Hell yeah. That's pretty sick. Oh, this line is it's actually up there on my favorite pieces. I love this line. Dude, I was in such a fucking awful mood when I was doing this line. This line really cheered me up. It's really cool. Like, it's so cool to see on this, because you have to realize a lot of these pieces, I don't really know what they look like. Like, truly, because I never had a monitor large enough to like really view them in full definition. And I didn't have colors in my laptop monitor that could like really have them be in their true, like, the colors that they were painted in. So a lot of these pieces they look so much better to me right now because I've never seen them on a good monitor. So shout out to everybody that donated, by the way, for the new tablet, because yeah, I do appreciate that. Because a lot of these pieces were done when my tablet was broken, so I never had the chance to really see what they looked like. Krita and Lion are from Study Jam? I think they are, yeah. Fortunately, my time in Study Jam is, I think, over because they are so much behind me right now. Or ahead of me, I guess, in terms of time. It's so fluffy. It is very fluffy. I do like. Yeah, there's a lot of work in here. There's a lot of work. I do enjoy it though. Yeah, look, my color offs for my my Warhammer piece. I never got around to doing this piece, by the way, because at this point I started my portfolio work and I never had time for it. But it was going places, let me tell you. Like, I had already done a full bash map of it. I did a full bash for it as well. So all I had to do was paint it, but I just never got time. This isn't my bash map, it's this one. Yeah, that's my bash. So I just had to paint it over this, like basically. I just had to line it on and paint it, and it was basically done. But this would be such a sick piece. I will go back to this at some point when I have the time to do it. That is really sick. This is a Mortarian, if you guys don't know. He's a Warhammer Primarch. It's a very cool universe. Lots of fun details to add there. I also did this part of my my Nathan Fox course. This is experimentation on mood. That's fun. Okay, anyway, it's a bit of a trip down memory lane. I do that every now and again. But let's talk about Jets' piece real quick. So I'll close all this. Real quick like. And let's look at Jets' piece. Which course did you take? Designing? Yeah, designing with light and color was the course that I took. I also took Craig Mullins' course on digital painting, and I took the one that I took the most seriously was Harley's course on realism. I think that's a really, really good course. Highly, highly recommend. That's the piece again. And here's a reference. Jet, if you're still in here, give me the comment, would you? Give me the accompanying comment. Also, thanks for linking me that post, by the way, Erica. I will paint that maybe tomorrow. That'll be a fun study to do with the stream. Also, shout out to the internet, man. It actually made it for, I'm assuming, 3-ish hours. But I like what I see so far. Those colors are pretty accurate. What I really hate is the fact that I don't have any like basal information on the hair. I see that same sectioning happen here, which I don't like to see. I see in you the same fear that will take the heart of me. I wish there was some information here, just like a once over, right? I mean, how much time does it really take you to put like something like this like over here really quickly? Just to address the place, right? Because you don't know how much that's going to help and how much you could maybe use from everywhere else in the piece. Just like a once over is sufficient to help you with the read. It doesn't cost you any time. Really quick once over is fine. I don't like the super deep burgundy colors, and I'm considering cooling it down. Is that a common practice in portraits? You don't like how strong that is? I actually really like that. I'm a big fan of that strong saturation. I checked the study channel, I found something that drew me. Oh cool, I don't know if I posted mine. But yeah, I mean, if you want to intentionally cool this down, it's fine. The picture doesn't seem like it's blown out of saturation, but there's obviously a bunch of subsurface happening in here. So yeah, it's okay if you want to cool it down. There's a few ways of just quickly doing that. You could even do that with a hue shift, like really quickly and just slightly, right? Hue shift. You could just slightly add a bit more desat in there. Like if you think that'll look better. But I for one really like that red, honestly. I think it's a very strong, good focal point to really like bring home into your piece. So I for one really enjoy it. I do think that it's gonna blown out in terms of saturation in certain areas, but I don't particularly mind it. See that? I think it's a beautiful warm color. I would keep it in the piece. I like it. But again, it's your piece, so it's your preference. But overall, everything else is looking quite good. Doesn't look bad whatsoever. While I don't want the eyes, I mean, it's fine to put the eyes a bit earlier in a piece, the complete eye, but just a bit of a note in terms of like the piece itself. I'm not quite sure how long you've spent on the proportions in general, but a lot of people will find it a lot easier to put the eyes in, at least a facsimile of the eye, and then doing a bunch of like measurement and verification through the eye to verify your entire proportions, because depending on like what you use for your landmarking, it can be a lot more efficient for you to put that eye in at a slightly earlier juncture, and it makes everything that heads away from the eye, or heads like later on in the piece, it makes that a bit easier. So a bit of a note in terms of processing, since we've been talking about that, in terms of how you arrange things in your process. You cock along, that's pretty rude, Inner Glow. I don't think you should be talking to Iris like that. She's been nothing but kind to you. I still never found the original picture. I suppose I could search C Black Horse. Yeah, I don't mind either way, but I think the picture you sent me is good. But yeah, so to answer your question, Jets, I don't particularly mind it. If you hate how clean the value is, I can understand that because it's kind of like cleanly warm. So you can infiltrate a little bit with some granulation. So I just use something like a graphite brush like that. And, you know, I just hit it with a little bit of desat and I'd go over certain areas. So I'd still have a bit of that saturation peeking through, but it'll be much more controlled, right? Maybe that's what you're looking for. Like I want a bit of that saturation peeking through, but I don't want it to be like super cleanly peeking through. So maybe that's the effect you want to go for. What do you think? You like the way that reads as opposed to that? So I have the same kind of bleed through saturation that I'm looking for, but it's subdued a bit more. The forehead, is that man of space alien? I think he just has a very pronounced head over there. Not just head, but a brow region right there. I have spelling mistakes and correcting spelling mistakes. It's okay. I'm sure she didn't take it to heart. But that's what I would change, Jets. But otherwise, I think it's going quite well. Strong superciliary arch. I know he's a thinker for sure. Every centimeter adds an additional 100 points of IQ. So he's at least 300. Yeah, but maybe I would up the warm over here. If you want to up the warmness to the focal point, I would up maybe this warmness right here. And it makes sense, so now it's no longer competing with the values over there. I'll leave the saturation and stop sectioning off my drawings. Yeah, really stop sectioning off your drawings, because you're adding so much time to your clock if you do things by sections. And at the end of it, you don't really end up with a painting per se, because you... Like, the painting doesn't... Like I said before, I've told you this in DM before, but the painting informs itself as you develop it, right? So in its informing of itself occurs very slight deviations, perhaps even great but relatable deviations to your reference, which makes the piece yours. And to allow that to really to be fostered well into a piece, you know, to nurture that into a piece, it's good to kind of develop stuff like that. It's just better for the piece in general. For it to be more of a painting than for it to be just more of a 1:1 of a ref. So it doesn't really matter if it's for practice. Like, I think both ways are perfectly sufficient to learn things from. But I would advise, like, if, for example, if you were to gift this to somebody, then I would like to see a bit more like life in the painting as opposed to it just being a 1:1. I feel like I prefer it to be a little bit more, you know, just a little something to kind of differentiate it from a photograph. But again, for a study, I think it's fine. You are missing a bit of warmness in the light, by the way. I don't know if it's intentional, but the entire picture happens to be saturated a bit more. So these lights over here don't tend to desaturate them as heavily. I think they could be easily be brought a little bit brighter. So you could easily kind of fix it slightly by going over certain areas. I'm just kind of bringing back that saturation a bit more. Alternatively, if you don't like how saturated the reference is, all you have to do is you can simply do this, where you can drag the reference into a new document. I'll show you this. And what we could do here, you could just go to filter, adjust, and we could, not that much, but we could mildly desaturate it with a bit of a level shift. What am I looking for here? Adjust, cross-channel adjust, there you go. So I could slightly select the saturation and I could maybe play with this a little bit. Maybe I can pull it down a little bit more. So I can play with that saturation, bring it down to like a fairly more realistic group maybe. Something like that. That looks like he's hasn't drunk blood in like 15 days. But something like that is fine. Just bring it down to a more reasonable amount. But again, I kind of dig the saturation, not gonna lie. You could make a really cool, like a realistic portrait out of that. And by realistic, I mean in the style of realism, like the Master series we were looking at. I think that'd be cool. It's like a support group. Yeah, Ashley, Erica, Iris, they're all really tight-knit. They're a tight-knit clan over there. It was always fun. Alright guys, hopefully that was helpful, Jets. I'm gonna call it on stream. Hopefully you had a good time with me today. Got a couple of pieces out there. I'm gonna maybe take a couple of seconds off, play maybe a game or two of something. Hopefully people are online on my TeamSpeak. And then get back to work on lining out my 3/4. It's gonna be the end of my day. But hopefully you guys enjoyed your time here. Like I said, these streams are very much more to test my internet connection than anything else. But hopefully, let's say, at least by the start of next week, we'll be doing much more rigorous and regular, hopefully, studies on the stream. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, let's figure out who to raid. Let's send some love over. Let's pick somebody new. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, Shade, I'm sorry, it's a little bit late and we got a little bit sidetracked. But again, I'm mostly just trying to burn the hours away. NASCAR, how's it going, dude? It's my boy NASCAR in there. Shout out to you. But let's go to the art section real quick, see who we can raise. Raid, rather. You wanna raid that guy that just streams peanut butter? No! He just streams a jar of peanut butter every day. It's actually one of my favorite streams. Is that my boy Tom Chi right there? Am I not following Tom? What the fuck? Did I accidentally unfollow him? Well, no, but he's not showing up for some reason. Oh, that's why, because he's down there. Oh, Mr. Random News is streaming as well. I haven't rated Azar in a bit. Let's raid him. Why not? Please stop unfollowing your friends on Twitch. That's only for Bonnie, so not really my friend. So let's raid Azar real quick. Alright guys. Thanks so much for stopping by. Do appreciate your continued support. Thanks for all those subs today and for the follows. I will see you tomorrow for our 4-hour stream, hopefully. And until then, I will catch you later. See ya.